There were times I was lost, dark had fear, couldn't see through the rain. In the end it was clear, hit the fan. I was more than one man, who was there to lend a hand? Together we'd stand, always had my back, my guardian soldier. Team pulled together, united we conquer. Blessed is he who in the name of charity carry me when I'm weak, straight through the valley of darkness. Pitch blackness, the heartless, regardless, fear couldn't part us. Thick and thin, there by my side. At times we collide, but in the end we ride. Thick and thin, there by my side. At times we collide, but in the end we ride. We ride, 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 ride. I am my brother's keeper. Keep on holding strong. United we stand, divided we fall. Together we belong. I am my brother's keeper. Keep on holding strong. United we stand, divided we fall. Together we belong. I am my brother's keeper. I am my brother's keeper. I am my brother's keeper.
Welcome back, Moto fans, to our very first podcast for 2025. On behalf of Mental for Moto, I'm your host, Pete Wolf. I hope you all had an awesome break and are ready to get things started with a bang when this year's race season kicks off. Before we get rolling, I'd like to give a big thanks to our partners here at Mental for Moto: Graphics by Aqua, Southeast Pools, Death Grip Products, Iro Helmets, Bolt Everywhere Premium Racewear, Five Gloves, and Wolf Building Compliance. I'd also like to give a real heartfelt thank you to Daniel at Seaview Carpentry and Property Maintenance and Heath at Kimber Constructions for their support to get this year underway. A shout out also to our February sponsor of the Mental for Moto wall calendar, Ultimate Toy Haulers. The trailers that these guys are building are what dreams are made of. Make sure you go check them out on their Instagram page and give them a follow while you're there. Speaking of the calendars, they're still available for sale via our website, and the proceeds of these go towards funding the initiatives of the 2025 Rider Support Program. There's two different designs to choose from: our National Motocross and Supercross calendar and our Victorian Motocross calendar. And each calendar is packed with full colour images of some of the best up-and-coming riders in the country. So please log on and grab yourself one. They run through to January 2026, so you're still getting almost 12 full months of value. Also available via the Mental for Moto website, photo packages for every round of the 2025 ProMX Championship and the 2025 Victorian Motocross Championship are available too. So you can order them with full season discounts available for those who get in early. Now it's time to get into it, and I've got a great show lined up for you. Late last year, I had the pleasure of having the ProMX race director and the recipient of the 2024 Graham Steward Official of the Year Award, Mark Hancock, in the Moto Asylum. Mark's a real character who's known all around the motocross paddock, and he's a wealth of knowledge. So it was a privilege to get to pick his brain about every aspect of the sport and even bounce around a few ideas with him. Hope you enjoy it, and please let me know what you think. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for having me along and asking me to drop into lovely Wonthaggi on my way to Moe for state title round.
Yeah, and unlike when we have races here, the weather's not too bad.
Still blowing its head off.
Yeah, just comes with the territory.
It does. It's always a bit windy here.
Yeah. Well, we've just finished up this year's ProMX Championship, so to break the ice, I thought I'd get you to give me your thoughts on this year's championship, highlights, lowlights, key moments, and yeah, just how you thought it all went.
I thought it was a pretty amazing year, to be honest. I think, the opportunity for the sport and the publicity it's getting over the last 3 years with MA taking over the promoting and ownership of the championship has made a big difference. Each year the riders have got better. It's been outstanding watching what they're putting out. The content that's coming out through all the media, including yourself as a photographer and all the other boys that are out there, the TV and the exposure that's coming from that. It certainly seems to have lifted the riders in their own way. To come down, I think it's the first time ever the senior class has actually tied on points and gone to countback to decide a championship. I know it's happened in the past in other classes, but I don't think it's ever happened in the MX1 class or that open class. And to come down to that and just the racing that has gone on It's been outstanding. Not even at the front of the pack. The race for 20th has been like spectacular racing. With half a dozen guys just going at it all race, and you just couldn't predict anything. It's been quite amazing.
Yeah, I think the level of the sport this year has definitely lifted, and we're also seeing, and it's something that we've discussed on the podcast a fair bit recently, is the number of satellite teams in the pits as well that are getting behind and giving these riders support and giving them opportunities, I think, to train more, to have better equipment, and just pursue the sport to a higher level. Like, what are your sort of thoughts on that? Is that sort of something that you would agree with?
Yeah, I think they're doing a great job. You've got teams like Rising and Elliott Brothers and Winner and others coming into it, but all of a sudden you've got guys coming out of Rising and they're in the top 10 shootouts.
Yeah.
They're getting on the podiums and they're competitive as a satellite team. We're seeing some real talent coming out of that. The teams will be watching too. The pro teams, we'll call them the pro teams. So the bigger teams, they'll be keenly watching progress of those guys. But, those teams are doing it professionally.
Yep.
Even though they might be a satellite team and they might be privately owned, they're acting in a professional manner. And I think they're doing a great job. And the depth that's added to the racing is showing up the result of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's been fantastic.
I know with the MX1 class, we've got a bit of an ageing pool of riders in Kirk Gibbs and Todd Waters and Meddy's, obviously. It's his last year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing who steps up and fills that gap, whether it's, MX2 guys that are going to step up into that role, or guys like Zach Watson from Rising and Liam Jackson, whether those guys, the privateers, satellite riders, are going to step up and fill those elite factory spots. It's going to be really cool to see how that pans out.
It is. And those factory rides, they want to win. So they're going to be looking for the best people. So that pool reaches far outside of that even, are we going to see more attention to maybe internationally based riders? There's some, you look at Purvis coming out in the final round, and he was blistering. He's got to put himself on the radar in that kind of space. So, they're going to win. They're not one of those pro teams that's going there to lose.
Oh, for sure.
They've all got their own dreams and their own aspirations. So they'll put the best guy they can get on that bike. But, that pool's not that deep. And, Honda's pretty good with, it's obviously Webster signed on for, next year and maybe
Todd
beyond. Wilson
there,
Todd, And, I think Connolly sounds like he's going to stay on and defend his title. And so, those seats are all pretty locked in. They've had an amazing year, the Honda team. And, and CDR, they're there and they're knocking on the door as well. A bit of bad luck with Dean Ferris earlier, but, they put their weight in behind Jed and he did great and took it to the wire in the end. And then you've got all the 250 teams.
Yep.
And the MX3 teams, all connected. MX3, what a revelation they've been.
All 80 of them. Yeah.
Oh, man. And the racing and the competitiveness. And they've kept turning up.
Yeah.
Turning up, trying to qualify. And all of a sudden they're starting to qualify. And, that's great to see the riders develop and as their craft and get better at it. And next minute, I'm seeing them on the start line for the finals. Yeah. They're not in the consolation race anymore.
Yeah, I think we had
good on them.
I think we had a couple of rounds where there was 68 riders signed up for MX3. That's unreal because that's the future of the ProMX.
Yeah, I think so. And look, I don't know what it is. They're doing the miles. They're travelling and doing the series. A lot of those people. The riders are getting better from doing it, but. To have such strong fields there, there's guys there right now that you're looking at and you're going, well, there's the next MX2 lot. So, you might be right. The MX2 guys get a chance to step up into the MX1 class and, who knows? Caden Menier, if he's doing well overseas, maybe he won't come back and there's a spot.
Yep.
We'll just see. But he's doing a great job.
Yeah.
And a great family, so...
Yeah, I could see the similar opportunity being afforded to Connolly as well because I think he really has international potential the way he rides.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know from getting around the various camps at the races, be it interacting with the riders, working in the media tent, even talking to other officials, that people's understanding of your role and even to some degree who you are as a person is pretty circumstantial. So beginning with your position...
Circumstantial.
That's a polite way to put it.
Thank you.
So beginning with your position as race director at the ProMX, tell us a little bit about your role on race day.
So it actually starts, we normally roll in about Thursday, myself and the clerk will roll in, and it starts even before that. So we're having meetings with the clubs in preparation for the events. So as a race director, like the formal, we'll call it interpretation, is I'm sort of the bridge between the steward who represents MA and the clerk of course that runs the race meeting. The whole thing is to provide consistency in the application of rules from one round to the next. So I also work closely with the media and trying to deliver the product. So effectively, I've got full control over the schedule. A race director has that power. This, you don't have to go to the steward and ask if you're going to change your schedule. You can just do it. And it often happens, particularly with TV, that we're just winging it, just fitting in with their program. We need to hold up for them, so we're adjusting our schedule. And just to make sure those races get started on time and they get finished properly and everything takes place. And then the clerk, of course, can do his job and the steward can do his job. And the promoter can get on with what they've got to do and you guys get on with what you've got to do. And it's just trying to coordinate all those things. So we start with the club, obviously, get them ready for it, what our expectations are, turn up on the Thursday on a one-day meeting. You walk the track. That's the first thing you always do. Walk the track, see where it's at, what we're going to need to do. Generally, we're going to need more flag marshals straight away. Where are we going to put them?
Yeah.
And they've already been prepared for that. We're at a higher level than any track really is licensed for, because most tracks are licensed for a club day, really. So they've got scarce flag points, but the regulations is you've got to be able to have eyes over everything, every bit of track, and the higher the level you go, you've got to do that. So we'll often go away and have half as many flag marshals again. And if people think that's a bit crazy, if you go and do an MXGP, so I'll give you an example at Horsham when we ran the Junior World Championship, we had 17 flag points.
Yep.
But for the World Championship, we had 54 flaggies.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yep.
The higher the level you go, the greater the expectation and risks are involved, and you've got to step it up.
Yep.
So that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Whereas, you get there and they're going, oh, but it's licensed for this, it's licensed for that kind of racing. That's just what you work through all the weaknesses of the track, what you're going to have to do, protect your people.
Yep.
As best you can, and go through those. Then we get to the Saturday, and obviously now we've got the whole entourage in. Sometimes we get involved in the car parking, especially if there's disputes with the club.
Yep.
As in riders and connections, having disputes with the club about where they're parking, and you've got to manage all those kinds of personalities and things like that. So, as a race director, I sort of get to know the riders more. As a clerk, of course, I didn't really get to know them at all.
Yep. Except when
I knew their numbers.
Yep.
I know numbers, and
Yep.
most officials, if you talk to them, they don't really know people like we know numbers, because that's what we look at. They keep changing the clothes they wear, so you can't even recognise them.
Yeah, yep.
So we do that. We get to obviously do our riders' briefings on the Saturday at the Nationals. We're all prepped up, we're ready to go racing, and then turn up on the Sunday, and effectively I'm just running the program, making sure that everything's right, keeping an eye on the track. I'll often be in the mechanics area, like watching the TVs there.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And what's going on, because I also know what's coming across the TV feed that way, and seeing what they can see, because TV's brought a whole new complexity to being an official, where everyone can be a judge later on, but being official, you're basically winging it right from the start. Everything is happening live. You got to make decisions on the fly, and then if they don't like the decision, then it's up to them to protest, and then it goes to a hearing with the steward, and it gets dealt with in the proper manner, like it does at any other race meeting.
Yep.
And we don't really have time to be reviewing TV footage, and we don't have the access to the technology to do it. They're too busy producing a show to give us access to theirs, so you just can't get at it. So that's pretty much what we're doing as a race director. Obviously, I've also, you're dealing with the development of the series. So I have meetings with MA and trying to deliver the product that they're trying to do, work with, and then try and deliver that on the track for them. And sometimes I can see an opportunity. It could be an interview, or look, I'm going to have a bit of time here, do you want to fill it with something, and just put it out there in front of TV or the media and how that's going to work. And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And
when you say product, do you mean from the point of the race meeting and the racing, or the entertainment perspective as the TV package and the way the spectators might see it, or is it a mix of both?
It's all of the above. I personally think it's the greatest sport on earth. I think it's it's a tough sport. It's very leveling.
Yeah.
But it's tough. The people that participate are tough. They go through a lot of hardship, and they get hurt and all sorts of things happen, and yet they keep turning up and doing amazing things. So, it's to put them on show and give them the opportunity to shine and be the show. And all we're really doing is providing the platform, I suppose, and working towards that. So it's hard to really know sometimes. I think everyone on the team, and whether it be the officials, the riders, the media, the TV production guys, the MA staff, they're all really going in one direction, and we're working off each other, and everyone's listened to openly in that space. I think that's been a really great thing, that in ProMX everyone gets, can have a say. It doesn't mean you'll get what you want.
Yeah, of course.
But, more minds can help in that space. And you're winging it.
Yep.
Because everything's changing. Never-ending excuses that I can't even explain how they come up with what they want to come up with. And I'm talking about riders and those.
Yeah,
just wow, never heard that excuse before.
Well, that sort of opens the door. I know, talking to the riders and even my own experience at the races, you seem to sort of be omnipresent. You've got your fingers in every pie. You're watching everything that's happening. And I had a rider in the studio recently, and we were just chatting off air, and he started coining these phrases which I thought were funny, it was Hancock's rules and Hancock's law, and it was in jest, but sort of his perspective was that you are the god of the day, the series, and it was pretty funny.
I think that's taking it to an extreme, but I suppose I've been around probably one of the longest in there. We had the time. I was really fortunate. I got trained, and I'll say trained. I got the pleasure to work with Kevin Williams a lot.
Yep.
Was from down here. He was he's still a great guy and a great friend of mine. And we still talk quite regularly about our kids.
Yep.
And all sorts of things. We've become friends. We never started off that way. It was just business. And and this sport is business.
Yes, yeah.
Even at club level, you treat it like business. So, you do it in a professional manner as best you can. It's not Hancock's law, I suppose. It's just that I've known and seen things probably longer than some of my counterparts. But really, it's a team that's delivering that.
Yep.
I'm really fortunate to have worked with some people Kevin for a start. He taught me a lot about promotion and just being around him. He's an incredibly knowledgeable person. He's a very good official in his own right. He's not done the same pathway as a lot of others because he's operated at a whole different level, but he's an internationally qualified official.
Yep.
So, and he's a good one at it. He's a very fair official. We've all got our own styles and whatever else, but and then I had the opportunity to work under Cam Scheiber, and he was the clerk of course when I got invited to come along and be the assistant clerk, and work with him. Even going back to Mrs. Mack when I first started officiating. Mrs. Mack is a legend in Victorian officiating. And Les Odgers, they were probably the two real people that started me off. I'm not sure what Les is doing anymore. I know he was he stayed in the sport for a while, but then left for whatever reason. He was
Yep.
more into rugby. But, trained with them and, and then worked with so many people over time and got to know people. So, yeah, as far as like, I appreciate what they're saying about my Hancock's law and this, but it's not that. It's just that I like to communicate with people. I want people to understand this is what we're trying to do. This is the rules. We just want you to do that, and none of us are going to have a hassle.
Yep.
That's really what it comes down to. And it's just knowing where to go and find out the information in a rule book or wherever, and having those contacts and the people that are around us that work as a team. So it's not a person, it's actually a group of people at all levels doing the same thing. So it's quite funny though.
Yeah, I think you sort of touched on it already before. I think one of the contributing aspects to that is that you know everyone in the paddock as people, not just numbers, and they know you as well. You give the briefing at the start of the weekend. You are interacting with the riders, the teams in a lot of different capacities as well. But I think also you're very often seen as the face of the officials. So I guess my next question then would be, is when you have the less pleasant aspects of the sport, say the issuing of penalties, we had pretty fairly controversial one at Maitland in terms of the Red Cross flag. I'm just throwing out a couple of examples. Maybe Charlie Cannon's start gate penalty at QMP. Like, is that all the clerk of the course that's responsible for communicating those and officiating on those, or is that part of your role as well?
No. It is the clerk of course. The clerk of course is in charge of all those things.
Yep.
So I can instigate an investigation. I can call a penalty that I've seen, just like any of the assistants around the course. But at the end of the day, it's the clerk of course that makes all the final decisions.
Yep.
We have we'll call it a sheet of penalties, which we say these are common things that happen, and this is the penalties that we would apply to those, and we call them the minimum standards. So minimum means minimum generally, and you can go higher depending on the severity of what actually happened, but there's flexibility there. You can also come off and not apply that minimum, but it's basically what we consider, and those penalties were actually not designed just by officials. It was by the whole race control group, going back a few years. When we first started, we all went through it, MA and industry representatives, and this is the penalties and so on, and they had their view. Yep. So probably things like the medical flag, there's no discretion.
Yep.
It's actually in the GCRs. That is the penalty that you get. The only discretion you've got is for the first offence for the year, where you may or may not apply a financial penalty as well as a position penalty. The second time it happens that year, then it's an exclusion, whether it be a waved yellow or a medical flag, and the money. There's no going back. The rule book says that's what it is, so that's what it is. It has really helped to get better compliance for the flags, because those flags are our only means of communicating with the riders. And if they're not watching them and reacting the way we need them to, then, people are at risk.
Yep.
Like it may be nothing, but it could be really bad. So you've got to always go to the default to the worst possible. So you go to really bad.
Yeah, of course.
So therefore we need you to respond as a rider in that manner. So the medical flags, there was a difficult one because some of it was on TV and it was picked up, and then it gets communicated to us, and then we've got to go through investigation. Then you can't get the footage, and everyone's going home and so on. So it makes it difficult in that space, and then more comes out as time goes out. So, but the race meeting has to finish at some point in time. The delays in that one was quite bizarre because there's also timeframes around protests.
Yes.
And then timeframes around appeals. So like it can be up to 14 days to appeal. They don't have to do anything for 14 days. And then at the last minute, they appeal. And now you're out another week. So all of a sudden a month goes by and you haven't finished with this. Protests could take a week.
Yep.
Depending on collection of information and whatever. So we're trying to do better in that space and turn it over quicker and maybe not rely so much on TV. And if people see it and they disagree, well, it's just the way it's got to be to keep it going, I suppose. And until we can get something better, I don't know what the answer truly is there, but there's a lot of difficulties around it.
Oh, of course. I mean, you look at other sports and the contribution of the officials and their decision-making process a lot of the time is a lot more final, I guess, and prone to fallibility sometimes as well. Like I've mentioned it before, but my background, like in fight sports and boxing, there's so many bad decisions and outcomes like wins and losses that have been determined by officials. And I think in our sport, it's a very fair process. And like you already sort of said, you give the riders and the teams a lot of time to make a case and state their case, and there's a bit of back and forth. So I don't have.
They're good people.
Yeah.
And they're chasing their dreams.
100%.
And an official sort of stealing their dreams.
Yeah.
Because they either didn't mean it, well, that's often, I didn't mean to jump that, or I didn't mean it. It's irrelevant that you meant to or didn't mean to. It's like it just happened. It's a bit like, a copper sees you sometimes and you get caught, and other times they let you go, and, you get pulled over and I didn't. We're doing the same thing. You got caught. I didn't. Sometimes it just happens like that.
That's life, yeah.
It is. So, things like you've got more minor offences and, Charlie Cannon with using a tool on the start line, and people go, oh, well, it was an umbrella. And I go, but it's the way the umbrella is used.
Yep.
So, it's an actual definition in a dictionary about what a tool is, and it's something that's used to make a job easier. And it could be quite innocent, but it happened anyway. So, the whole thing is you have rules to ensure the integrity of the sport and that it's a fair playing field for all people.
Yep.
So there's no one favoured. So if you're a pro, you get the same rule, the same interpretation as what a newcomer, privateer, first round gets. So it's up to them to be across the rules.
Yep.
Not say, well, I didn't know or I made a mistake. Well, basically, it's not an excuse.
Yeah, and there's a fine line there and the potential for creep if it's not applied sort of to the definition. The umbrella could be a screwdriver. It could be, the mechanic that's standing next to her could have been adjusting clickers and done it with a screwdriver, which, so...
That would be okay.
Yeah.
That's okay to actually do that. The mechanic and the rider can work on the bike.
No, I meant he could have used a screwdriver to clear out the gate.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Right. So straight away, or they pick up a broom. I think that day there was about 5 start infringements.
Yep.
Didn't hear about them. So you only heard about Charlie's because it was probably a high profile
100%
kind of thing, and people may think it's ridiculous, but there was people using start blocks as rakes. I've had people turn up with footy boots on to prepare the gate, and you're just like, nah, that's outside the spirit. What are you turning up with footy boots on? Obviously there's a purpose. You might say, oh, there was no advantage. And I go, well, then why would you do it? If you perceive there's an advantage, then there is an advantage. It may be insignificant, but it may be significant.
Yeah. So in simple terms, what is the rule around the start gate? Because I've seen, I don't think I've seen it at the ProMX that I can think of, but I've seen team mechanics and riders lift the gate up and clear stuff out. Are they allowed to touch the gate itself? Yep. Yeah,
so basically the rule, and it's actually defined in the GCRs anyway. So front of the barrel, the hinges of the barrel generally. So forward of the barrel is my turf.
Yep.
You're on our side of the track. So you can't have anything there. Anything between the rollback board and that barrel is your turf.
Yes.
You can do with it what you need to do, but you can't use tools to help you do it. So in Victoria, there's a lot of concrete start pads. Generally it wouldn't be accepted, but it's just been accepted that you can use a broom on those kinds of things because it's too hard to clean them off otherwise, and they're even worse when there's water on them. You can't do anything with them. But, brooms were always accepted as a accepted tool. Generally, that'll be in the final instructions, or it'll be within the sup regs, or it'll be addressed at rider's briefing that you can use tools in those situations. But generally, you're not allowed to use tools.
Yep.
So go back to old school, when we was first started, there was no such thing as concrete start pads, and you had a dirt start pad, and you just dressed that dirt start pad, but you couldn't be bringing in, like people that bring in handfuls of gravel and lay them down in the ruts. You can't be bringing in outside stuff to give you an advantage. Like a wet meeting, so they're running off under the waiting area and grabbing dry dirt. So next minute I've got 40 mechanics all bringing in dry dirt, and next minute, they're digging them out of, you got holes all through your waiting area. You just can't be doing that. And then, and if you've got two mechanics, then, and you've only got one, then I've got an advantage because I've got two.
Yep.
So you have one mechanic. It's a bit like enduro, I suppose. Like their mechanic's not allowed to work on the bike. They can help.
Yes.
They can assist, they can actually give advice, they can pass tools to them, they can hold the axle or the wheel, but you can't work on the bike. In motocross, it's a bit more active. So it's about the mechanic, the rider and machine.
Yep.
But that's the integrity of the sport. It's not like a team of thousands to support one guy.
Like Formula One, yeah.
When everyone else only gets one guy. Like that's not fair. So it's about being fair and it's about being safe. They're the two criterias that every official is trained to. It's actually written on the first pages of the GCRs, like in the introduction. It's about fair and safe. So that gets drilled into us all the way through all training, even up to the FIM level, fair and safe. And that's really your judgment, is using that as your gauge. And, like at the end of the day, like if everyone's using shovels, then everyone can use shovels, but it'd be just a debacle.
Yeah, of course.
Next minute, what are they bringing in, like electric shovels and
rakes.
Where do you stop?
Everything.
So it's better off in our rules. It's actually in our rider information sheets. It's actually in the final instructions. Often, it's raised in our briefings that anything you can hold in your hands. This came back when I was running the Nationals with Cam Scheiber and helping him and Kevin Williams, like anything you can hold in your hands, rags and gloves are accepted. That's the only thing. So you can use a rag and you can use your gloves, but you can't do anything else. So use your feet, use your hands, your body. Don't be coming in with weird boots.
Shovel shoes.
Yeah. Well, that's what footy boots pretty much were.
Yeah.
So you just don't be doing that. So that's really all that happens behind the start gates. That's your piece of dirt to get out on the racetrack.
Yeah.
And then away you go.
It's pretty clear by now, I think, for all the listeners that you've got a wealth of experience and you've been doing this for quite some time. And obviously getting to be a race director at the ProMX didn't happen overnight. So tell us a little bit about your journey, as what you went through to get there, what other roles you've fulfilled over the years.
Yeah, well, to get to the racetrack, there was no plan. There was no plan whatsoever. It just literally where the industry took me, I suppose, and prepared to turn up and do something to try and make the sport better and help, and just participate with it, so it really started back in about 98 or 99 or something, up in Horsham. Like my boys had just started riding bikes, and before that I rode a bit. I moved to Horsham. I was born in Box Hill.
Yep.
And we used to ride pushies down the creek and take our shovels down and build jumps like we did like everyone still does today. You get in trouble for doing some of the things we dug up. But so you go down, and we did all that, and I didn't move to Horsham until I was 13 years old. So never had an opportunity to have motorbikes or anything like that. When I was about 15, I convinced my parents they should buy me something, and they went and got an XL100, which I pretty much destroyed pretty quick, and I had to share it with my sister. And then, I played a lot of other sports as well.
Yep.
So I never really raced that much when I was young, and never had the right equipment to race. But a lot of good riders came out of the Wimmera area. Kevin McGee would be probably the most notable. And he's still a life member of our club, and we see him quite regularly. He's comes out, and a lot of other guys, people more road racing a little bit. They all came off the dirt, but people like Gavin Johnson, who's multiple South Australian road race champion, I think he's 250 Proddies, some of this I'm making up because I don't remember all of it.
Yeah.
Like Graham Koshman and Kim Grosser, and they were all enigmas around town, and we did a lot of bush riding. That's probably where I did most of mine, just bush riding with some of those fellas, and then I actually went off into windsurfing.
Oh, wow, yep.
Yeah, so I couldn't really afford my own bikes. Mum and Dad, they just weren't into the sport at all. So I had some mates that were windsurfing as well and got into that, and then ended up sailing waves and did that until I was in my mid-20s.
A bit of travel involved from Horsham to...
Yeah, I used to drive to Warrnambool a fair bit. We have got a lot of lakes around the area, so that's where it started. And then I went to uni for the second time, and because the first time I was really great at uni, but I didn't hand in any assignments or sit exams. I was a bit poor in that side of it, and they suggested I shouldn't be there. And then I went back when I was, I think, 24 or something like that, and moved to Geelong mainly for the windsurfing because that was the mecca.
Yep.
Back then, we lived down there for 3 years and then returned home, and I sort of wasn't quite the same sailing on lakes again, and all my mates had moved down there, so I actually went and bought my own bike then and got back into riding until my kids, they started riding, and then I got involved in the club, and in about 99 we didn't have any officials. It was pretty much been in recess. I got democratically elected, you're not riding, so you can be the official. So that's how that pretty much started. And then, from that I, had to go and do a level 2 course, and just that was, the level 2 was what you really came in at. Everyone started in Victoria on that. And then just, went to run some race meetings, and then went to the state titles and worked with Mrs. Mack and started doing some state titles and bits and pieces. And in 2002, I first met Kevin Williams, or 2001, and we shook hands out at the track without a track to run a national at the track 6 months later. And he had a lot of faith, I suppose, in our meeting, and I had a lot of faith that he was going to help us through that. We were told we'd never be able to do it. We didn't have the experience, which we didn't. But, you just get in there and chew like hell.
Yeah.
And that's all you really do. And we were so fortunate to have people around us, that friends, and helped out in that space, like Laurie Pearson, and a little bit later on Kenny Watts. That was after our first national. He got involved. He won tickets in a quiz on the radio station. Brought his whole family, went home and bought bikes for his kids.
Oh wow!
And that's how it pretty much started for him.
Yeah.
And and he's gone on and just contributed so much to the state. And even now, I think he's going up to be the state manager or something for the Victorian team, going to the junior Aussies. So, it's been amazing to be around people like those guys and working with them. So did that, and then Kevin asked me to go to Supercross at Parramatta one day, and said, you should come up. And then he gave me a job. I think he had an ulterior plan for me, and he got me to run the start line, not the start line, or the waiting area. That was the first sort of real job I did for them. Nearly got run over crossing the start straight. That happens to the best of us, doesn't it, Pete? Anyway, so, and look, it is a dangerous sport for everybody. There is nowhere safe inside those fences. I've seen the strangest things happen. You thought, how could that even happen? But it does.
Yeah.
And if you're around it enough, it's just a numbers game. I was with Kevin, and then I think that the next year, a couple of years, we ran a couple of nationals. So I sort of was learning, we were co-promoters at our rounds. We always wanted to make it our event. Yep. And we ended up running, 10 with him, 10 nationals. We also ran two, probably the most significant events were the 2 Australian junior titles. For this whole city, it was the most significant thing. We really made an impact. I remember the first night, in 2013 when we ran the juniors, and I had to stop by the local supermarket on the way home and get some stuff for home, and there was all these ladies at the was nearly closing, at the counter, and they were like, there's no bread here, and there's no meat, and there's no milk, and there's no, what's going on? And they said, oh, this motocross thing's turned up. And literally, like, because we had 500 entries.
Yep.
Families, like, the city had, 16,000 people? And 2,000 people turned up. So you swelled the town by 15%
Yeah, that's
of its
massive.
population. And they cleaned them out, and they had to order extra trucks in. And it had a significant impact that week on all the restaurants and the pubs, and, and motocross was in town. And that really was a significant time that happened. And then we ended up running again in 2017. Kenny Watts, he was on the stage in the 2013 presentations and sort of went through rattling them off, and we'd done sidecar nationals, we'd now done the junior nationals, we'd done ATV nationals, we'd done women's nationals, all in the space of like 13 years, like after basically not running anything more than probably a state championship.
Yep.
And then basically he came up with this idea on the wing that maybe we should just run a international and run a junior championship, or a world championship. And then Laurie Pearson, he grabbed that bit by the tail as well, and Jackie Hill and some of the other stalwarts in the club, and we ended up posting that off, and then we were awarded to run a world championship. And literally I had to go overseas and get my qualifications because it was going to cost us $10,000 to bring someone out.
Yeah.
To be the clerk of course, either that or homegrown. So like I just sort of rolled with it. It just didn't really, nothing was planned. You just kept helping out the club.
Yep, and you just did
so,
what
and
had
the club
to be done.
just took it. Yeah, so it's really that development, and then and just being around, and then obviously back in 2020 when COVID hit, and then Kevin was sort of pulling out. That ceased that run, I suppose, and the country has a lot to owe Kevin, I think. Like he raised the profile, he brought in live streaming, he was really innovative. He loves the sport, and the sport should love him too. They probably don't, just like me. Everyone love everyone. What's that? The Will Ferrell movie. What is it? Tropics.
Oh.
The basketball one. Like everybody love everybody. So, and it'd be nice if that was the truth. But, some people are going to get upset along the way, and that's the way it happens. And, and he had a business to run, and he had a family to bring up and all those things too. So, then we ended up with ProMX coming out where, the business is actually owned by every license holder in Australia, effectively, like we are Motorcycling Australia.
Yep.
So, and it probably brought opportunities that couldn't be done with a private guy because the industry's just not big enough in Australia.
Yep.
But we adopted a lot of the systems and procedures we put in place, like don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, of course.
And things that we've noticed ourselves, like, we're very good thieves of intellectual property in our sport, and we openly share it. So, just last round we had 2 representatives of the Motocross Commission from New Zealand came along and worked with our team as officials, and we literally handed over all our systems and procedures and everything they wanted to know, like openly help them get better as well. If they get better, we all get better.
Builds the profile of the sport, and
It does.
everyone benefits from it.
Yep, and builds consistency too. So, that's one of the things I'm quite passionate about is like being able to deliver the ride as a consistent package.
Yep.
And the harmonisation of the flagging rules was one of those things. I was on the Motocross Commission by then, the Australian Motocross Commission. I'd actually been a board member for Motorcycling Victoria from 2009. Been on that and been involved in sort of the development in the administrative side of, we'll call it the business or the sport. And then I was on the Motocross Commission. I was quite passionate about that. And with my training that I was doing for the FIM licenses, they have some really good training ethos, I suppose, or the way they go about it. And so we're sort of starting to duplicate that ourselves as a homegrown model at a slightly different level to what they're doing, but it's the same principles of trying to get consistency so that the rider knows how he has to behave and what the consequences are if you don't. That's really what the harmonisation of the flagging rules, completely modelled on FIM. Like, people want to compare us to the AMA. We're not the AMA. We're not. Our rules aren't even similar. They're similar. We use the same flags, but they have different meanings. But we're a federated model, so the states have their federation being MA. MA is affiliated with the FIM, so we're affiliated to the FIM. So that's who we follow. The Americans just do whatever they do because it's only in America.
Yep. Yeah, and look, they don't really seem to have much of a view of what happens in the rest of the world anyway.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean, and we'll steal things that they do too.
Yep.
You know, and we've actually done that in the Supercross space.
Big time, yep.
You know, because really, until Adam Bailey and Sando came along, and with Supercross in Australia, and we obviously had a period with other promoters going back in time with the Supercross in Rod Laver Arena. We went to all those, and then that sort of fell by the wayside in those Haleon kind of years or the era, and then that fell, Mr. Motocross and all that, and then it sort of went into this nothingness through the 90s really. And then, and now we've actually got a harmonisation with the AMA with our Supercross flagging. We use a yellow flag is just a cautionary flag, and the medical flag is a wheels on ground. Don't jump nothing. Don't just basically shut it down. It's not a medical flag. It has a whole different meaning, and that was adopted because it's simpler. Because there's too much going on in Supercross at high speed. So we do take attention to watch what everyone's doing basically, and openly share what we do and openly steal what works for them too.
Yep.
And
if it works,
and adapt it if we have to. So that's interesting. It's interesting, and always looking at things and can we do it better? Self-analyze a lot as a group, and that's like with all industry people and all sorts of things going on. So. And look, I've got to say, I've met some amazing people. I really like the riders. That's a good thing about being a race director. I got to know the riders better, so because it's part of my job now. And I've always enjoyed watching them and talking to them, but now I actually can have, I won't say a relationship with them, but it's a professional relationship, we'll call it.
Yeah, of course. And, we sort of made a few jokes before about Hancock's law and Hancock's rules, but from the riders and because I interact with, I guess, everyone in the paddock, from officials to riders and everything in between, there's definitely a hell of a lot of respect for you in the paddock. And that, I guess, leads me into my next talking point. As I mentioned in the preamble, at the end-of-year presentation for the ProMX, you were presented with the Graham Steward Official of the Year award by none other than Brett Metcalf, who's a legend of Aussie motocross.
Yep.
It's a very prestigious award, so I thought I'd probably should read out the award criteria for the listeners to give some scope as to what it actually represents. And it's awarded for integrity, dedication and commitment to the sport, skills and knowledge in the chosen field, respect and regard by your peers, the ability to impart knowledge and mentor others, the fulfillment of excellence in your duties, and officiating at a national level. It's pretty much, as far as I'm aware, the highest level of honour an official in the country can receive in Australia. More importantly, what's it mean to you to be awarded the Graham Steward Award?
Well, I actually knew Checkers.
Yep.
I got to meet him through Supercross, and he's a great guy. Unfortunately taken, by cancer in the end, and it wasn't a good time, but great bloke. He could wave flags like no one, and he was like the consummate professional.
Yep.
You never had to remind him that it was last lap. You never had to worry about who was the leader. He was just so switched on to his job, and he took so much pride in his job. And he made mistakes. We'd talk about those things. We all make mistakes. We're humans. Sometimes you get distracted by something, and it takes that split second, and you're now in world of hurt. But it's what you do next that makes the difference. And he was great in that. I didn't really sort of understand. We'd sort of had like an internal award giving kind of thing amongst ourselves, more as a joke, drinking some beers at the end of the series. And I've never really been a fan of that kind of thing because, like, who do you give it to? And it's more a popularity kind of vote. And then when I was a bit shocked when that came up. I'd had some opinions on it when these kinds of awards get suggested, and then got called up and was like, oh, okay. And it was sort of like, oh, well, they're going to do this every year. And that's the way it was sort of presented by Cam when he was actually talking, and then listening to what Brett was saying, and I was like, okay, I don't really understand what's going on here. And it wasn't until I came off that I ran into Sam Redfern, who worked with MA, and she actually explained what it was. And I was like a bit gobsmacked at that moment, so it's only been around for a few years. I think 2019 was the first time it was done in honour of him. And I didn't realise it was across all officials, all disciplines.
Yep.
So it's a great honour to receive it. Probably the thing that's struck me the most is even people that I won't say I've forgotten, but you'd lost contact with, like going back to, like 2000, when I first started. And they've come and made contact with me and offered their congratulations and whatever. That's probably blown me away more than anything, just the amount of people that have said g'day, and maybe I made a difference and helped them achieve their goals or take them on their journey. And just like I was taken on by Kevin and Cam on my journey and my club, and it all starts, it's all about the club, to be honest. That's where it all starts for all of us. Whether you're a rider or you're a coach or you're an official or an administrator, it all starts at a club. And it just needs the people to step up and help out, and more hands make light work. It's a famous saying. At the moment, we seem to be going through the more hands run away.
Yeah, yep.
Like, what about just offering a bit? Because that's a bit that person doesn't have to do now. So, it just needs more of that to come back. We'll call it, I look at my parents' era, like people got in and made an effort. Now it's like, you're putting me out.
Yeah.
What, I'm stopping you from checking your Facebook posts. It's not going to make any difference to anybody in life other than whatever it is you're doing right in that space.
Yeah.
You'd be better off out here on the paddock, getting real with people and meeting real people and interacting with real people in the camp area, drinking some beers and sitting around a fire and hanging out with kids that are 7 or 8 years old that I regard as friends.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
That kind of thing, that's what makes our sport really special, I think. So, but so it's like, I'm a bit gobsmacked. I'm still a bit not really sure. It's a lot of fuss about nothing kind of thing, if you know what I mean. But it's not.
Yep.
And so I'm really grateful that I was recognised that way, and and I've got a nice little shiny plaque, and that I can sit there and brag about to my mates while we play pool.
Yeah. Oh, look, I definitely think it's not nothing. As you sort of said already, our sport would be nothing without the volunteers. Certainly be nothing without the officials, and all of the officials, whether they're sort of level 2 right up to the national level, and even with international qualifications such as yourself. Like, if the listeners haven't caught on to it so far, like, it's taken years and a lot of hours to get there.
Yeah.
So apart from the prestigious accolades and the 7-figure paycheck at the end of the year, why do you do it?
Hilarious. Yeah. Well, it's mental for moto. You'd have to be mental.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I just like working with good people, I suppose. Like, I like running good events.
Yeah.
It's like really good to walk away and go, that was pretty cool what just happened there, and this was really great, and everyone's had a good time. They're gone home safe. Some terrible things that happen in our sport. There's terrible things that happen in life.
Yep.
Like, take it outside of the sport. Like, things go wrong and people get hurt or worse, and I can't say that there's not one that had, even today, they still affect me.
Yeah, yep.
And obviously there's the elements of danger and all that go with it, but you just hope it doesn't happen. Unfortunately, I've been around death a couple of times. Like, lost my parents too. I've been around that too.
Yeah.
So it's part of life, part of our sport. And then but just general injuries and people coming and going, and you just get to meet a lot of good people that I get to call friends and travel all over the joint. You know, and fortunately now with the Nationals, like at least I get to go and watch them, and you know, effectively doesn't cost me anything to go. You know, so that's really as good as it can probably get from an official's point of view.
So just passion for the sport is basically what underpins it all.
Yep.
And the people.
And the people.
Yeah.
And the people you work with, and you know, and they're all doing it for the same reason.
Yep.
At the end of the day, especially in the officials and the volunteers, they're doing it for the betterment of their club. They're doing it for the betterment of the sport, whatever it is. As long as they're all working in the same direction, it's a pretty cool thing to do.
No, for sure. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to discuss a few more juicy topics. I've got some juicy questions for you. So,
right. Okay.
Yep, I'll throw some.
I'll come up with some juicy answers then.
Some juicy opinions. Yep.
Okay, no worries.
It's time to take a quick break to say a few words on behalf of our awesome sponsors. Death Grip Products. Trav at Death Grip Products was my very first in-studio guest and the first sponsor of the Mental for Moto podcast. As a rider, Trav wanted a glove that was affordable, lightweight, and maximised performance and feel, but couldn't find anything that ticked all of those boxes. And so he decided to design his own glove, and that's how he came up with the Death Grip Reaper motocross and mountain bike gloves. I've been wearing Death Grip Reapers for about 3 or 4 years and absolutely love them. Ever the supporter of the Mental for Moto podcast, Travis set up a discount code just for listeners of the podcast. So to get a whopping 35% discount, visit deathgrip.store and enter the discount code MENTAL23, and you'll be able to pick up a pair of Death Grip Reaper gloves for under $23. Wolf Building Compliance and Fire Protection. Having a quality fire extinguisher in your trailer and workshop is one good way to make sure that your valuable dirt bikes don't accidentally go up in flames. Servicing the Greater Melbourne area, Wolf can help you out with all your fire protection needs. Visit wolfbc.net or click on the link below and use the contact form, and the guys at Wolf will be sure to look after you. Graphics by Aqua. If you want a lit kit, Graphics by Aqua have got you covered. Neon colours, metal flaking, holographics. Graphics by Aqua are taking jersey prints, graphics kits, and graphic design to the next level. Best of all, Graphics by Aqua is locally based and exclusively use premium quality local suppliers for their full range of products and services. They even do custom logo designs and work uniforms. To see some of their awesome work, check out the Graphics by Aqua Instagram page and give them a follow while you're there, or simply follow the link below to visit their website. Iro Helmets. Iro Helmets have won over 125 motorcycling world titles with world-renowned superstars including Antonio Cairoli, Jeffrey Hurlings, Marvin Muscan, even Jason Anderson. From the world stage right down to the grassroots motocross scene, Iro is the title sponsor of the 2024 Gippsland Motocross Championships and even supports up-and-coming local legends such as Memphis Trevina and Zane McIntosh. As one of the lightest and safest helmets on the market, when it comes to protecting my most important asset, I choose Iro as well, and I've been wearing Iro helmets for nearly 5 years now. To check out the range of Iro helmets, head into your local dealer today or click the link below to visit the website. Bolt Everywhere Premium Racewear. Growing up in the 90s moto scene, I love nothing more than a brightly coloured gear set, and they don't get much better than the 2024 range from Bolt Everywhere. My personal favourite colourways are the Blast 4.0 Vibrant Apparel and the Blast 4.0 Pink Apparel. Fully Australian owned, Bolt can even personalise your gear with in-house jersey and sponsor printing. To set yourself up with a premium quality Bolt gear set for the 2024 season, head over to the Bolt Everywhere Insta page and DM Tom to place your order now. 5 gloves. The new 5 MXF race motocross gloves have just hit the market, and having had the opportunity to test these out at the local track, I can tell you that they are quite unlike any other glove I've worn. As the highest end handwear in the 5 range, the quality, function and comfortability of the MXF race is obvious the moment you slip them on. Whether you prefer motocross, bush or even road riding, 5 have a glove to suit every motorcycling discipline and every budget. Simply click on the link below to find the 5 glove that is right for you. Now, let's get back to this episode.
All right. Well, it's not too often you get someone with your knowledge and experience in the studio. So I thought while you're here, I'm going to take advantage of it, and I'm going to throw some of the more juicy topics that I guess have been raised and discussed, or I've heard discussed over the last sort of 6 months, 12 months, whether it be by riders or parents or, other people around the paddock, just fans. So the first one is a topic that came up on our Going Off Track podcast a while back. And since then, I've actually discussed it with a lot of people around the paddock, and it's actually, I guess, had overwhelming support from the riders. When we spoke off air, you said it's something that's actually come up previously, so I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on. And it's whether or not we should award points down to 40th for the motocross in Australia at the national level. So just to give you a bit of background, the analogy that I came up with when I first, considered this as a potential was that in our sport, if someone races and comes 20th at one round of the ProMX championship, keeping in mind that it's a championship, and you get another rider that comes 21st at all 8 rounds, at the end of the championship, the guy that does that one race and comes one position higher actually ends up higher because they score a point in the championship standings, which for me, I guess it doesn't really sit so well, and it's not really an incentive to compete in the whole championship. I think if you had points down to 40th, there'd be better racing through the entire field. It's a reason to line up because you're going to get a rank at the end of the year. There's no beating around the bush in Australia. Our, quote, pro-level riders don't really get a lot of money unless they're for a factory team and they're really getting in the top 5 in the premier class. So points actually gives them something to race for in a ranking. And from the rider's perspective, those rankings at the end of the season, rather than having maybe 30 or 40 riders with points, you're going to end up with 60 riders in a class that have scored points at some point through the championship. It makes getting those points, winning a championship, even more impressive. And for the riders that are further down the rankings, it actually gives them something to sell their sponsors. So rather than going, well, I raced the whole championship last year and scored no points, they might be able to go, well, I actually finished 40th in Australia, like at the national level. Anyway, they were just some of the reasons that I've sort of come up with as to why I think awarding points down to 40th at the national level might benefit the sport, but I'd rather get your thoughts on it.
Okay, so it's interesting how the circle just keeps on turning. So this was actually done. So going back, Kevin Williams actually came up with the idea for the MX Nationals. I can't remember when it was, but let's just call it, say, like 2010. Who knows? I can't even remember exactly when it was. And he came up with exactly the same kind of idea with riders, and they were all in general support of it.
Yep.
To begin with. And the whole idea was based around giving them some reward for competing and travelling and getting points. The reality of it is to the winner goes the spoils. Everyone else is the first loser, and so on thereof. So if you go back to the basis of competition, it's all about, the spirit of sport, and then the second part is to the winner goes the spoils. So, and then you have a podium and so on. So the points awarded lower down has 2 different things. 40 points for the win. That's what we're talking about. Or
50,
something,
or
whatever the number happens to be.
Yep.
So let's just call it, if everyone gets a point, we have more points rewarded, 25 points to the winner, 22 to second, 20 to third. So they get the big drops on each one. Then to fourth, it's 18. And then to fifth, it's 16. And then one off everywhere all the way down to 20th. So that's how. So to the winner goes the spoils, gets the most advantage out of it. So let's just say, I think back then he was awarding to 35.
Okay,
so
yep.
35th. So you had 35 points. Then you had 32 points, and then 30 points, and then away it went quite a lot deeper. The reality of it is, it didn't really add to more entries. Didn't actually result in more entries. People still had their budgets. They still raced their motos. They race because they want to race.
Yep.
And they want to go to good tracks. They want to have professionally run races. They want to have competition. The points really isn't a didn't actually eventuate to be any major motivation. The other side of it is nowhere else in the world it's done that way. So at the FIM level, they fiddled around with that. Like he even fiddled around with Superpole you'd award points. The problem is if you drop a race now, like you have a bike failure or you crash out, you lose 25 points. Theoretically, it's not that hard when you can actually get back in the title chase.
Yep.
Because you've only lost 25. If you've got 8 rounds, in our case there was 8 rounds, there was 17 point scoring races, and you win everything else, you will recover that 25 points. Okay, because you're picking up 3 points every round. Okay, so effectively you've actually have to race 10 rounds to pick up 30 points rather than 8 rounds to pick up 25 points. Okay, so it actually makes it the championship itself tighter. The actual champion, to the winner goes the spoils. So that championship, the last couple, the guys that are going to be on that podium at the end for the overalls for the whole year, it's actually about, that's where it's all at. Okay, it's great that the others can have a reward. Like, as you said, I turn up at one race, I finish 20th, I score a point. You turn up at every race, you finish 21st, you get none. It's no different than qualifying. If you don't qualify in the top 40, 41st and 42nd are basically the fill-ins. Everyone else goes home.
But they have qualified and they're competing for effectively nothing.
Who's that? The 41 and 42?
Yeah. No. The 21st to 40th.
Yeah, they have. So, they're competing for that to score a point. So if they're always scoring points, that point doesn't seem as important. So I look at someone like there's plenty of guys that you see them celebrate more openly with scoring 1 point than the guy who won the race.
Yep.
It's so exciting for them to score 1 championship point and to work so hard and what that's worth. Whereas if you award down to 40, you're basically giving them out like participation awards. And there you're handing lollies out. Now you can say, well, we take it on to sponsorships and things like that. But at the end of the day, you can have a guy. So let's go back to club racing. So I won the club championship. How many competitors were there? 1 in my class. But I get to put it on, like go off and say, I'm getting a sponsorship, I'm going to the local bike shop, I'm the current club champion in the 85 small wheel class. And they go, oh, that's just great. But at the end of the day, like, there's one of you.
But therein lies, I guess, one of my arguments.
And it doesn't make you not a champion. Don't get me wrong with what I'm saying. I'm not lowering it or anything. It's just like, it's a national level in particular. Like, I think that it's about the cream. That's what is bring the cream to the top and just handing out points.
Well, see, that's where I guess my opinion's a little bit different. I think that those top 40 riders are the cream. That is the national level. It's not the top 5. It's not the top 10. They're the best guys in the country that are making the biggest effort to race. That's why I'm only advocating for this at the national level.
And that's what it was.
Yep.
They had their own score table in the GCRs.
I think if you look at the standings at the end of the season, once the championship is done, the guys that haven't scored a point aren't even listed. So, like I said, over the course of the championship, you might have 35, 40 riders that have scored a point or more. But if everyone that's competed in the championship ends up in that leaderboard, like you look at Cole Webster, won the championship, he hasn't beaten 35 riders or 40 riders. He's beaten 60 or 80 riders to win that championship. And I think it's, I guess, a better representation of what that championship is. And that's where, I guess, because I had that argument put to me before about the participation awards. Like, we're not handing out participation awards. It's like, yeah, but we want this to be the best 40 riders in the country. And yes, we don't have, especially in MX1, 60 knocking at the door trying to compete in MX1 at the national level. But we'd like to. I think that's what we should be aiming at. Not that you have 35
But did the
turn
best
up.
40 compete?
Well, you want it to be that way.
But did they?
Probably not. It's going to be close, though.
Because there's plenty of people that basically could go top 20 that just never enter.
I don't know about that. Top 20?
Toby Price.
Oh, yeah, but he races a different discipline.
Well, he started in motocross.
Yeah, but I mean, there's probably, anyone that...
Then we'll go to Callum Norton. He turns up on the motocross track. I understand. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I don't have a favouring. It's funny that it was the riders that actually, and particularly the ones at the top levels, it was the riders that drove the removal of it.
Oh, really? Yeah, yep.
And now it's the riders bringing it back.
Yep.
So it depends which level you're pitching at. So it makes a big difference losing 35 points in a championship. And if it goes to 40 points, because if you're all going to score a point, then it's got to go to 40. Potentially, I drop one moto on 40 points down. Well, then I've only got a 3-point differential. It's almost, if I have one failure, then it's almost impossible to win this championship.
Well, I guess the way to offset that is if you start with 50 points and then you have those same discrepancies for first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So
it'd have to be major gaps, like
6 points. It'd be double.
Yep.
Then the points are effectively worth half as much. So that dropping around is relatively the same. It's exactly the same. You're just spreading.
And that might work.
Yeah, spreading the points further apart.
Yep, that might work in that space.
Yeah.
But it's also harder for the punters to get their head around as well because they race for 25 points.
Yep. No, look, I completely
understand. I think there's pros and cons to it all, but it was mainly driven by industry and riders that they didn't like that point score. And so it'd be interesting to go and talk to, the top guys and ask their opinions on that same topic.
It's funny you say that. I had a rider that is now consistently in probably the top 10, and he was like, "No, they don't deserve it. Like if you're not finishing in the top 20, well, you should be better. If you want points, you should be better.
Or work harder."
Yep. And his old man got stuck into him. It was hilarious. And said, "Well, remember when we went to this thing and you didn't even qualify, and then then you kept falling over in practice and getting bad start gates, and we went for 3 years. We competed at the national level, and you didn't score a single point." And in the end, the rider was like, "Well, actually, maybe it's not such a bad idea." So I thought that was pretty funny because he'd forgotten very quickly that it had taken time for him to get through the ranks. Yeah. Look, I'm not a rider, and at the end of the day, I'm not. I'm taking the position of advocating for it. It's not something I'm, passionately for or against.
Yeah.
It was just an idea that has been getting knocked around, and I like the idea. I guess I can see more arguments for it than against it. But I don't think it's something necessarily that has to happen. Or the sport's going to collapse. But I just thought it would be an interesting one to get your opinion on because you've been around for so long. And I didn't know that it's, I guess in a slightly different level, but it's been trialled before.
Yeah, we went on for maybe 8 years, 9 years. It was quite a long time.
Yep.
And in the end, the industry and the riders said, no, we don't actually like it. And then it all became about harmonising again with the FIM.
Yeah, so of course, yep.
That's part of the driving factor behind it. So there's all those things in the, I don't know. Maybe is it really the points that are the incentive to race? Like you look at it.
Would be nice if it was the money.
It'd be nice. It would be. But you go back to your top 40 again, and you discuss that, and then you say, but look at the entries. Like, that's not why they're racing. They're not racing for the points. They're racing because they want to race.
Yep.
And they want to race good guys and get close racing. That's what makes you hungry for it. So MX1's, like, packed. We actually were oversubscribed in one of the rounds. I can't remember which one it was. We were oversubscribed. You had to qualify to get in.
Yeah, one Thaggy had
42 or 3 or something.
Yeah, yep.
So, and then all the others had plenty of riders there, like the MX3s really stood up. And then all the way through, even into the 85s.
Yep.
They kept turning up. They want to, I think, at the end of the day, they're racers. They want to race. It's not really about scoring points. They just want to race people and get better.
Well, I guess one thing that I've seen this season through the year is, and I don't know if it would make a difference with the points, but like I've seen riders, that are 25th, because sometimes I'm taking photographs of these guys, so I'm watching them fairly closely, and they might be in 25th place, and the guy in 26th is coming up on them, without painting it too poorly, they just mail it in. They just let the guy pass because they've got nothing to race for. They're tired, they're exhausted. And yes, they're a racer, but it makes me wonder that if there was actually something to race for at the end of the season and they were trying to beat this guy, they're probably someone that's their opposition and a rival at the end of the championship, maybe further down the field, it would give these guys something more to race for, more to train for, and more to invest in, I guess. Not saying that it will, but I definitely won't unless you try it.
Yeah. And I'd be good either way.
Yeah.
I really don't have an opinion on it in any major way other than, there's tradition and traditions are followed.
Yep.
It didn't transfer into that in the past. It doesn't mean it won't.
So the idea actually came up because in the Supercross in the US, I believe it was this whole year now, if you finish 22nd in the Supercross in the US, they didn't get a point because they reshuffled the way their points were allocated, and they lost their minds over there that you could win an LCQ, make it to the final, finish last, and then not get a point. And I thought,
it's all about the money, mate. They pay all the way down to the bottom.
And I thought,
you just got to make the final, you get paid.
Yeah. And I thought, well, in motocross, you've got 20 guys not getting points. So I just thought it was a big inconsistency. And then that got me thinking, well, why don't they score points down the 20th? So anyway, we'll move on. I think, that was a good one to break the ice.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So I know one of the factory riders in the paddock, a big factory team, has apparently been advocating to make all of the rounds 2 days.
Right.
This year we had 6 one-day races and then two two-day formats, being Maitland and the final round at Q&P, which coincidentally were actually different formats as well between the two days. And also, I know a lot of the riders, and again, it depends on where they're at in their careers, whether they're riding for teams, whether they're self-funded. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not the series should be spaced out more to give more time between rounds. And there's also been talk about people advocating to have it closer together. So, maybe having 8 rounds over the course of 3 months or 2.5 months with a couple of weeks in between. What's your sort of thoughts on that and our current format versus, could you see any other ways that might make it better or worse?
Okay, so there's a lot of working parts in this.
Yep.
A 2-day event has a whole nother lot of contingencies attached to it. So to run a second day is actually reasonably expensive. So there's way deeper parts. So it's whether or not is there an expectation that the second day or the first day is televised, as well as the second day.
Yep.
Because the cost of production for TV is off the charts. It's significant, and even the sponsors don't pay for it. So if it's going to be televised or it's going to be just one day, the medical team is a big deal. You've got volunteers mainly on that. They're taking, you've got some of the best qualified trauma doctors and surgeons and stuff from around the country volunteer their time, so it's another extra day out of their time that they have to give. There's also the cost of accommodation and travel, and you've been on the road trip and know what it costs to do that. And an extra day, you say, well, it's only one extra day, but it's more than one extra day because for us, it's actually, we're away for 4 days. And, my guys are taking time off work and often on their annual leave.
Yep.
I look at the guys that are on my team and, they're not in jobs that, they're highly paid and professional people in their fields of expertise. And, they take off effectively 8 rounds. They're taking 16 days out of their annual leave, not to go off on holidays with their wife or anyone else. They get to trudge around in the mud and the crap and get abused and told how useless they are by people that really aren't qualified to judge. And now they're taking an extra day.
Yep.
So now 8 rounds, they're taking 3 days off. That's 24 days. How many days holiday do you get?
Plus travel. Travel's not, you're not in a machine that just gets you there. A teleport machine.
It's time, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of other moving parts. Then you've got MA staff that have to go as well. The whole paddock. And then you've got the privateers. They've got to take another day off work.
Yep.
So on and so forth. So 2 days is a little bit more complex. For a pro rider, it's probably great because it's another possibility of picking up a paycheck. But the factories will only put up so much money anyway. So there's a lot going on in that space. The 2 days, I've probably not gone in that space. I'm probably more of an advocate for a day and a half. So I'm never a big fan of practice and qualifying. I think it destroys racetracks. They just go one-lined and, it develops poorly. Whereas if you went to a day and a half, like a lot of our setup would have to be more efficient.
Yep.
Our sign-on would be more efficient. To some degree, we actually did it at QMP this year because the amount of rain we had in the lead-up, we couldn't get in. We had to wait for the surrounds to dry up enough that we could get the trucks in, and then we're waiting for you got the big transporters in, then you get the rigids come in, then you got to park them up, and then you got to park up the privateers come in after that. Well, normally that starts on the Friday. The trucks come in, then the rigids in the afternoon, then all the privateers come in the morning on the Saturday, and then they set up, and then we go to sign on, and that's like 4 hours. But we did it in 2. So track walk 2 hours.
Yep.
We did it in 1. So, and everyone walked the track, everyone got signed on. It was all quite comfortable. So we could pick time up there, and then maybe that Saturday afternoon, that's when you would have your practice and qualifying. So it's especially clay tracks. Like sand tracks are easy. Clay tracks are a lot more finicky and easy to get them wrong. Like too much water, not enough water, not rip deep enough, rip too deep. All these factors are at work. Yep. If you had practice and qualifying and maybe a qualifying race, you could be more like the FIM does, and they have a qualifying race. Maybe you don't. You just have practice qualifying, maybe an extra moto, and be 3 motos rather than 2 motos. But you get to test your track. You know where the weaknesses are. We can, it's a bit dry over in turn 8. We need to put more into that, and you can get your track better.
Yep.
On championship day, we'll call it. So I've been a bit more down that track, and you got not a lot of extra time invested, and that's effectively what we did on the Maitland round.
Yes. Yep.
So it was the same championship classes plus the 85s. So the same amount of traffic, same amount, but we just spread it out. QMP was completely different.
Yep.
We had 6 classes. We had the vets, we had the 65s, and we had the women.
Yep.
As well as the 3 normal championship classes. So that was just simply rider numbers. A lot of riders, got to get through a lot of races, so it's just a completely different format for that one. So it's traditional. We give the riders in the championship classes, they'd have an independent free practice and an independent qualifying session
on the Saturday. Yep.
And the women, the vets, they did their normal qualifying and had 1 moto, and then the final moto the second day, and that padded out the whole program. So really, the Maitland model's probably, I quite like that. Whether or not you run an extra moto or you don't doesn't really bother me. But I think you could still keep it as a 2-day event with not a lot of extra. The medical is a big cost.
Yep.
It's like just to have them there. You got to have ambulances there. Like the GCR say, you will have ambulances in attendance. They're like $5,000 per ambulance just to have them parked there. And maybe they won't do anything, but I'll tell you what, they're worth every cent when they have to.
Of course. Yep.
So and we've got the best riders and the fastest guys, some of the fastest guys in the world. When they hit the deck, it's going to hurt, and you want the best team on the ground looking after them. So, they're a big deal. There is a lot of additional cost. It's certainly a 2-day event, I think, would be stretching it.
Especially like we spoke about it earlier, even getting volunteers, flaggies, like the logistics of finding people that are actually going to fill all those spots. From a TV perspective, it wasn't something I sort of thought about from the cost point, but I'm not sure that Australian fans would have an appetite to watch 2 days of motocross racing. I just don't think the appetite is necessarily there, whereas having a really great package of, 1 day, or what we've got at the moment, I think it's a 2 or 3 hour telecast. I think that's fantastic. Like
live stream from the first moto,
yeah, of course,
of the day, and then you've got the TV show in the afternoon.
Yeah, but I think the difference there, or the discrepancy there, is the fans will watch the live stream.
Yep,
and I think your general TV viewer is more likely to tune into the TV. Your secondary fans.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, so
and I think that's often, I've got friends that haven't really been into it, and you just go, it's going to be on SBS at 1 o'clock, and then they ring me up the next day. Oh yeah, I watched that. That was really cool.
Yeah.
So it's bringing a whole different fan to our base that normally, and maybe they'll turn up at Horsham next time. And when we ran at Horsham this year, I was a bit disappointed, but I reckon I spoke to at least 15 mates who were all into bikes that didn't go to the event but watched it on TV.
Yep.
And we're 5 kilometres out of town.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, what? Why didn't you just come? Oh, well, I was just doing other things, and I just thought I'd watch it on TV. Oh, it's a really good show. And you're going, yeah, but we needed you at the gate.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's some people that are electing not to come because it's on TV.
Yeah, and look, I've been guilty of that. I lived on Phillip Island for 20 years, and I loved MotoGP, watched that a lot. But I went a few times, but then I'd watch qualifying and practice in the morning sessions, and then go home and watch it on TV, because you see so much more, and it's such a better package.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the guys on TV are doing a great job.
Yeah.
Those shows are really good.
Yep. And it's gotten better, over the last 2 years, especially in Australia. The motocross telecast, the commentating, the whole way the package is put together, the little
they're doing a great
bits.
job.
Yeah, it is. It's gotten to a really professional quality now,
Yep.
where your average viewer that is just used to what they see on TV will tune into this package, and it doesn't look any different from any other high-end sport that they're watching, whereas previously it probably looked a little bit occasionally backyardy with some of the things that were happening. So it's been awesome to see. Yeah, I really like you've added a lot of aspects there that probably the average person and fan doesn't think about in terms of the difference between a 1 and a 2 day format.
Yeah. Oh, and look, and even from a privateer's point of view, 3 motos, it's another race where the bike's a bit more worn out. The guys on the 250s in particular.
Yep.
They're trying to get, they're flogging them.
Yep.
And next thing they're having bike failures. It's costing them more. You think every second round or every 2 rounds you do an extra round of racing.
Yep.
So more rubber, more everything.
More expense.
Yeah. So it's hard to know where that line is. Maybe a blend of both. Maybe have some that are, a day and a half or 2 days, whatever it turns out to be. That's above my pay grade. We basically go to run it. We will race whatever the program is,
yep,
and try and get through it. But there's just so many more moving parts, and people have to take time off work. And
I kind of liked what you sort of suggested before in terms of having maybe practice qualifying. You can have the non-qualifiers race, Super Pole, and even the extra classes if you've got juniors on a Saturday.
I think Super Pole actually has advertising rights, so it needs to be
on the main day.
It has to be on the main day. I think there's some connection there.
But yeah, and so you can have your track walk, you can have your briefing, even on Saturday morning, then the qualifying practice, all that sort of stuff happening on that Saturday.
Yep.
And then 2 races on the Sunday. I think that'd work pretty well, and that's sort of the compromise between, I guess, like you said, the putting the hours in on the bike and the time and the maintenance. And I guess it doesn't change anything points-wise. It adds an extra day where you've got to have the ambulance and the cost for questionable benefit. The riders that I know have been sort of for it have made the case that, well, we're driving from, say, Victoria to Queensland for 1 day. It makes the time and the travel more worthwhile.
The road trips is where it's at, man.
Yeah.
I remember us doing it with my boys, and Jory was racing at national level.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, the first time he scored a point, he was so excited. Going back, from my own family's experience, to gain a national championship point was the best thing that ever happened.
Yep.
But the road trips and the mates you met on the road, and the people in the pits, and it was worth it just to be there for one day.
Yeah. All right. So my second part of my original question was just the format and the overall time of the championship. Do you think it works well the way it is now? Would you like to see the rounds closer together or spread further apart? I don't think you really could spread them further apart, but what do you think about that, the way the format is? Would you like to see more rounds?
Don't know. Well, again, there's the pros and cons of it all.
Of course, yeah.
More rounds, probably better than more rounds would be to have extra races within the rounds.
Yep.
I think. So the other thing, more rounds, so now we're talking more tracks. There's not that many tracks that can actually handle us.
Yep.
It's a big issue. And then the second part is, if they can handle us, do they want to? They've got a lot of places, even in Victoria, that could probably cope. But, and I'm not even suggesting, say, someone like, say, North, was it the Mildura Club? They could probably have a venue that could do it, but they run Hatter. There's plenty of clubs that are doing their own thing, and it's, so you've got to have the right culture within the club. There's so many moving parts to the nationals.
Sorry, just to interrupt. I see the MA emails come out where they're looking for venues for different, and it's not always just motocross, but different criteria and different genres of the sport, where they're looking for clubs to host, next year's national rounds. With motocross, do they get many applications beyond the rounds that are actually hosting?
Sometimes.
Yep.
I think there's more so now, with maybe TV rights and things.
Yep.
Well, not TV rights, but TV being a part of the benefit. But again, like some of the places, although they nominate, you really can't go there because you're just not even going to fit in the front gate.
Yeah, of course.
Because we're taking up such a big footprint. You've seen it yourself. By the time you just park the trucks up and you present it professionally and trade alley and so on, it takes up a big footprint. So I think the spacing sort of suits a lot of people. I think it certainly suits the staff for MA because, a lot of these people are also involved in other disciplines that are also happening. So, we had people coming to the last 3 rounds who actually are involved in the road race championship. So it's not about motocross, it's about all disciplines.
Yep.
So it's a bigger deal for them. Race safe as well. So they also do the road racing, they do all sorts of other things as well. So they were already making those commitments, and we've got to work in with their calendars so that our calendar can work. So that's where these gaps. So you often see July is not a good one because you've got Fink, which is highly popular. You've got Hatter going on at the same time. You've got staff that are going to all those things, riders that are going to all those things. So it's spread out. Then you've also got to fit in your state championships. So everyone wants the prime times. So
there's only so many weekends.
There's only so many weekends. When you actually look at it, I remember when my family and my boys were racing, we were doing somewhere around the mid 30 races a year.
Yep.
You're pretty much from the start of March all the way through to the end of October, you were racing. And then you take a few months off, and what are you doing? You're practicing to get ready for next year. And that's what we did. And that's still going on today. Clubs need to get their club championships run. The state titles have to get run too, And if we say, well, we're going to spread those out over 3 months, let's pick the best 3 months and go, well, okay, we'll make it, say, March, April, May, and maybe June. And we pack them on all there, but the state titles, they want to run in them too. So you need our Jed Beatons and our Kyle Websters and our Todd Waters and all those guys to go and do their state titles as well to keep their racing skills up and spread it out over time. So I think that you do have to have it spread out. Otherwise, the others can't actually operate. We're bigger than just the nationals. Isn't it interesting? It's just come out with the AMA with Pete Berio from KTM making a statement just in the last couple of days saying, the the whole AMA program's just too many
31
races.
races, yeah.
It's just too many races. We need to cut this back. The commitment the factories have to make to that is like massive.
And the pressure they've put on by making it the Super Motocross Championship has arguably increased as well now, because you've got the combined series. All the money and prestige, I guess, is now in those extra 3 races at the end of the year that you have to qualify for. So the option of doing one or the other season, especially if you want a factory ride, like you don't have the option to go, I'm just going to do Supercross or just do motocross, because they want you to do those last 3 races. So the pressure on those guys, being at the very pinnacle of the sport is immense. To stay healthy,
and you
to
get
stay
hurt.
fit.
You get hurt or whatever during that time and get back up again for next week.
Yeah.
At least this we can do our very best to have our guys as fit as possible when they turn up to race as hard as they can, and also give back to the sport by competing in their states. And we need, one of the things that I don't like how our sport has gone is, and it's really a reaction to the riders, and I'm not going to say they're selfish, but they are, is like, let's do it juniors one day and seniors the other. Like when we were racing, 2-day opens was where it was at.
Yep.
You couldn't get graded in Victoria unless you're on a 2-day open or a state title. Now they go off to regions and stuff like that, and they're getting graded off regions. And there's just not many 2-day meetings. Now, juniors need heroes. So if you have juniors today, like their heroes that they're watching are all 16-year-old. Those 16-year-olds, some of them really aren't ready to be heroes.
Yeah, yeah.
And they've got no one to watch as heroes because they're not watching the seniors.
Yeah.
They go home. And the seniors are doing the same. They all want to just turn up, get maximum riding they can, and go home and not even supply a flag marshal. That you brought up the things of flaggies. Like, this country is in big world of hurt coming. You can't even pay flaggies anymore. They just don't want to do it. So
what do you think has changed? Because, I grew up racing in the early 90s as a kid, and it was mums, dads, cousins. You bring your older brother, and, they would flaggy. It was part of going to the racetrack on the weekend. My mum sold raffle tickets, worked in the canteens, just did whatever was sort of required. What do you think's changed nowadays that makes it so hard? It's like, I see a lot of the parents, they're just invested in their child that's racing, and beyond that, there's not a lot sort of happening. And that's not to take away from the people that are, but it does seem to be a real problem, like being able to get flaggies.
You can't even get like the local club. Like, a person actually asked me this recently, and I said, okay, let's just they say, they should come along. It's a great day out. They get their lunch, they get this, and they might be picking up $100 as well. And why wouldn't they come? And you go, okay, let's turn this around and say the local tennis club is going to have a tournament and they need ball boys. Okay, and they're going to give you lunch and so on and so forth and pay you $100. And I said, and after you go there and you've thrown these balls around and you think, well, that was boring. Like, it's not my gig.
Yep.
So I don't go back. So now the motorcycle club doesn't go back and be the ball boys next year. Now they've got to find another club. And then they thought that was pretty boring too. And then you're running out of clubs. After 10 years of... So it all... In Victoria, I know it really started with the Gippies, and they made it more professional, and they thought, well, it was a region, for God's sake. It's an interclub. And they made it more professional, and now we're going to pay the flaggies, and we're going to have paid flaggies, and we get them... And they're going to come in, and this is going to be great for the rider because, they don't have to do anything. And then now the parents are abusing the flaggies because they're not very professional, but you're bringing in people that don't know anything about the sport, and some of the flaggies that are the parents aren't much good either. But, you'd like to think that they're somehow invested in it. And then effectively you run out of volunteer groups. Now we've got the other side of it is you've got track standards coming in, and they've got to be 3 metres off a track, and we've got 10 flag marshal points, and that's meant to be sufficient enough to run a race meeting on 1.8 kilometres of track. That's 180 metres per flag point.
Yeah, that's huge.
And it's 10 flag points, and that should be enough. you're meant to be able to cover everything and not have massive sections under control.
Yep.
So then we can't even field 10.
So what's the solution?
Maybe, well, something I've sort of been thinking about a bit. I think that at national level, it's a big deal. Like, we've gone to virtually every race meeting. I think Horsham was good, Gilman was good. Half of them. So half of them we had sufficient number, or probably 2 or 3 we had more than enough flaggies. Another 2 or 3 we had sufficient enough to get 1 per point, and the rest we're scratching.
Yeah.
In other words, yeah, we've got 26 flaggies we need, and 23 actually turned up at the gate. 5, they had them written down, they had numbers, they just didn't show up.
Yeah.
So it's happening all the time.
We've spoken about the cost of running these events. Would it be feasible in any way, shape or form to have, say, an organisation that is comprised of, there's 40 names on the list, and amongst that 40, say you need 25 flaggies, they organise 25 flaggies, the organisation gets paid, the people get paid, they're obviously trained, qualified, and then they would be more experienced. So you've basically got an organisation, at least at the Nationals, say, that goes to every round and is responsible for flagging duties at every round. Is that something that could potentially happen? I mean, You look at the numbers, it's going to add up real quick as to what that cost is going to be and who forks it out.
Yeah, well, who does fork it out?
Yeah.
So the rider, you don't want to be flaggy, then you put up the money and pay the flaggies. But, you do a national group. So that problem is existing right now in Queensland.
Yep.
So virtually, I don't think anyone, they're all paid up there. A lot of the time they're like, they might be work for the Dole people that are in all these teams. They don't do a bad job or anything. But like, even that's who we were using up in Queensland, those 3 rounds, we were struggling to get all of our flaggies to turn up. And they were getting paid. And they were an organised group. So everything you just said, it didn't make any difference at the end of the day.
Yep.
So the best people actually is the club supplies its own members to be those people.
Yep.
That works the best. So you need a club to actually run it. So that's where places like QMP and MX Farm, they had more difficulty getting that. It looked like we had the numbers, but when it actually arrived at the gate, they weren't there.
Yep.
And so now we're compromising the racetrack to try and make it work. So I really don't know what it is. I think that, are we just all a bit more prima donnas and we think we're the stars of the show and the show owes us something and we should be able to just turn up and be the stars? Or do we actually need to take some ownership of our own show and all start to get more engaged?
Yeah.
And that's every rider, every parent, every girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, and be involved in a club. Clubs are groups and families of friends and participants, not people that just show up and then leave.
Yep.
I look at basketball in our city, like the amount of people that pull up at the front door, the kids get out and go inside and the parents drive off. It's not just our sport. It's actually a culture of people. Like, people have changed.
And I mean,
and they've got a lot more going on in life. They've got multiple jobs. There's a lot more going on in life, and people don't want to volunteer.
I guess the difference to when, I used the analogy before of when I was a kid racing, nowadays both parents are working full-time jobs, and I guess the appetite to go and spend your weekend doing something else again is probably reduced from what it was back in those days. Yeah. So, definitely.
And even as a sport, they also want to go out and, they want to go out and they want to go on holidays.
Yep.
Yeah, and spend $6,000 going to Bali. That was a bike or half a bike, so they don't want to give up the finer things.
Yeah, like you said, it's a bit of a cultural thing, so that would be interesting. But like you said, we've got to find a solution, otherwise we're going to be in dire straits.
Or look at technology. We're starting to use flashing lights and things at the Nationals a bit. Is that a way of the future? Like, it's got a lot of inherent problems with it. Just to use lighting systems like comms. One person can't see and watch everything. Yeah. What happens when he has a bit of a sleep? Someone gets jumped on. It doesn't mean that a flag is going to save me, because sometimes they're having a bit of a sleep. There's no perfect solution. Is it a blend of both? But lighting systems, you're talking So up in Queensland, John Gerkes is doing amazing things up there in the sport, and he's gone out and at his own expense built up a set of about 8 or 10 light systems. Like it's probably $4,000 or $5,000. Like they're $400 or $500 to make.
Oh, easy, yeah.
So and then you've got to have people to drive them and all the other bits and pieces that go in. Is that the way the sport has to go? And then you've got to have a flaggy to run it, because you still need to have people. Yep. At the end of the day, you need people. No point having an accident and you've got to really take action and try and control riders. You can't do that with flashing lights. They just don't.
And I mean, you see flagging often extends beyond just waving the flag. Like if you've got a rider down, you see the flaggy going at the start of the jump and basically cutting off half the track and pushing the riders to the right side, and lights can't do that,
Yeah.
So unless you've got lights with flashing lights and arrows, it gets really complicated.
We'll need tertiary degrees to drive them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the space, but like who funds that? It's like, is it up to the club that's got 17 flag, or he's got 8 major jumps and a few other bits and pieces, and next minute you're saying, well, you've got to come up with $5,000 to comply. Do we have different? I don't know what the answer is, but maybe a mix of that is going to help. But people, you still need people.
Yeah. I mean, what happens on one of those days if
people create teams?
You have an electrical problem and those lights aren't working on race day.
Yep.
And then you've got no physical flaggies to take the spots. It's definitely something that needs a solution and needs to be thought out. But there's definitely no quick fix.
Yep. And look, and I'm really keen to push it. I've had connections to the road race. They've sort of got that going on.
Yep.
And now we're starting to get some crossovers out of the road race, and they've come and seen dirt, and they think this is pretty cool, and got involved in it. We need more crossover of disciplines, but again, people only got finite time.
Yeah.
Don't know.
All right,
it's challenging.
We'll move on.
Yep.
I got a couple. I guess they're probably less chunky here. The women's class, MXW.
How good
at the national level? Fantastic. That last round. What do we have? Nearly 30 riders on the go.
It's not only just the numbers.
Yep.
It's the quality.
Oh, for sure.
Like they really, really riding well.
Yep.
And getting better all the time. They've been really a godsend. So I've been a keen follower of the women into the sport. Kenny Watts from Horsham, he was one of the biggest pushers I've ever seen in the state of Victoria. He was really keen, always pushing girls to have a go and come and ride. And that's followed through. I think that treating them I won't say with respect, that's not fair. They always have been, I think, and respected, but they've been able to walk the track with pro riders and talk to them, and they do a lot of, they have little workshops at all our rounds. They go on their own special track walk, and they get I won't say they're getting favours, but they're being encouraged to step up and be a part of it, and it's worked.
Yep.
It's clearly worked, and they're doing a great job, and they're just getting better and better. People like Charlie Cannon coming along, even Emma Milicevic, and they were sort of saying, "Oh, we don't really like competing against them because they're just too good." But now the others are coming to them.
Some of those juniors coming up are amazing.
Yeah, and they've got fantastic role models. They're all really nice girls. They're good with the other girls. They're good with the guys as riders. They're respected as riders. They're racers.
Yep.
They're not just going out and trail riding around the place. They're racing, and they're doing a really great job.
As we sort of said,
really entertaining.
Yeah, you've got the established veterans of the MXW class in Emma Milicevic and your Charlie Cannon. Then you've got all these young, hungry ones, and some in between as well. Taylor McCutcheon is sort of that in between level. She's at that elite level.
Yep.
And then you've got all those juniors like Maddie Simpson and Emily Lambert, and they're really knocking Danielle McDonald, pushing on, knocking on that door to be. They're going to keep those top girls on their toes over the next couple of years,
and those girls will drag them along with them, and they'll just keep on getting better.
Yeah.
So really good.
So my question then is, and this is something, I've got daughters, so I'm always advocating for having a good playing field and opportunities for women in all sports. I would love to see the MXW class get the coverage on TV But obviously there's limited TV time. So one of the things Zane McIntosh actually came up with the suggestion is dropping the first MX1 moto of the TV coverage and replacing that with MXW or using that space to put the MXW class into the TV telecast. I think that would be good. I think as far as female racing in Australia goes, they're quite underrepresented, and it would be good to tap into that at the junior level and get more people racing in the sport, involved in the sport, and you've got a fairly untapped market there. So, yeah, I think that would be a pretty good thing. What are your sort of thoughts on that?
Getting more people coming into it, like the MA actually dropped the age group. 15-year-olds can come in and compete against the women, which is giving them the opportunity to race against those better quality riders. That's definitely helped. I suppose advertising dollars mean a lot. You know, sponsors come in and they put a lot of money into the sport, and they're sponsoring the premium classes. So MX1 is the pinnacle.
Yep.
So I can understand, you know, you build your product around your best product. Like, so the product is the race meeting and the sport, and their highest profile product is the MX1 class. And so they get the lion's share of the TV coverage. How that works in a 3-hour show is obviously they come back out after lunch. There's also a reason why we've had to change the way we prep our track over lunch breaks and things like that to get the best guys, because they're going to come out first up. The good thing is they form us racetracks, so you would have noticed we actually work the corners up quite regularly in the lunch break when we've got some time, or we do some track work just to get a corner racing better, and then they come out and form it up and get us going. That's got some risks in doing that. We don't always get it perfectly right. Again, clay's the biggest one. If you haven't got your prep on point, it's hard to get that back up. So, you know, I don't know what an extra half hour of TV time would make to have all of them there together. I think they're probably selling their most popular price, but the women are putting a case out for themselves.
Yep.
Like, really, this year's really come out. You know, what the good work that was done last year to get more of them in, and then they've put the hard work in. I think if they keep going down that pathway, the reality of it is their racing is a lot better to watch, but the few girls out in front, they're not providing really close racing. Like, you know, Charlie's winning by significant amounts,
yep.
And then, you know, you get back to Taylor McCutcheon and people like those, and, you know, they're sort of spread out a bit, so that, you know, and you turn around the MX1 as like scrapping at the front and scrapping for third, and, you know, there's 4 guys in that, and so there's a lot more exciting TV, we'll call it. It's a lot more watchable, we'll call it. So I don't know what the mix is. You know, like I don't have an opinion really either way. It's not really my side of things to be involved in. I'm just more from an enthusiast point of view
100%.
and understanding it. I think it's a great thing that can be done, but they're also getting like all the live streaming. It's actually happening.
Yep.
They're getting as much, you know, as the 85s were getting. Like, they're all on the show.
See, my original suggestion was to drop the MX3 guys because they're the young guys. They're going to have their time in the spotlight. But then it's like the MX3 provides some of the best racing. So if I put my fan hat on, like, I want to see those 2 MX1 classes on TV. I want MX3 because that's sometimes some of the craziest, wildest racing of the day.
They're hanging it out.
Yep. MX2 obviously deserves to be there. So I didn't want to actually drop, you know, I don't want to drop one of those classes, but I would love for them to have the opportunity to be on normal TV, because I think, you know, there's going to be girls at home that have never seen motocross that may just happen to flick on that on TV and go, wow, this is something that, you know, it's an option. I could do it. It looks awesome. So,
well, they're certainly giving themselves the opportunity. Like, I think if they start getting closer to the 40 riders, if they keep growing the way they are, and then those people are coming through, they give themselves a better case all the time.
Yeah.
Now, the bigger your fields, the more racing you've got right through your field. as soon as you have small fields, they string out and people all settle into their pace.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
So, if you've got 40 gates full, you've always got a race on your hands.
Yep.
Even if the race is for 35th.
And that's the beauty of having cameras. They can follow the race, not necessarily always just the leader.
So, and they do.
Yep.
They actually search them out. The commentators are very good at sending subliminal messages. Like even sometimes, no, not that jump, the other jump.
Yeah.
The little messages they send into the camera crews. Yeah. So, yeah, I think the girls are doing a great job. Do you sacrifice the MX1 for it? That's a whole different discussion and money talks. And if my money's not on the MX1 class, then I'm reducing my money. And are we going to be able to replace that with the MX3 money? I don't know. I don't know the finances behind all that.
I guess the point of all these questions...
But it would be really cool.
Yeah, it's just to get people talking and thinking. Yeah. Like, that's it. It's not to solve the world's problems.
Yeah.
So speaking of the best racing, this was a conversation I had with Kenny Watts the other week.
Right.
We were just talking about 250s racing in the MX1 class. Now, this is something that I guess I do have an opinion on. At the moment, they're not allowed to race in the MX1 class. They're outside of the specified capacity, is what I understand. So you can't race a 250cc bike in the MX1 class. So my point of view is, I don't care if you're on a Pee-wee 50. If you can compete, I want to see the best guys competing against the best guys, and I don't really care what they're out there riding. So what is the reasoning behind not having or allowing 250s in
They were until what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, so what changed?
And before that hung around for about 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
Again, I'm making things up in my head, something like that. 4 or 5 years. And before that, they weren't allowed to compete against each other. So I know that when I was involved on the Motocross Commission, we actually put it up that the 250s could compete because the amount of people riding 450s was diminishing and the 250 fields were going through the roof.
Yeah.
And the MX1 was suffering at every level. So they said, well, just to get people racing and, it's all about racing. Like at club level, interclub, it's about racing and having people to go and race with and going back to the pits and you pit race with them and you have all those conversations. So it was about but having a race with six entrants is boring as. So
where was that happening?
It was happening right across the industry.
In which classes sort of just...
the 450s. The 450s, they weren't there.
Yep. So that's why you allowed the 250s.
So the 250s came in and they could fill that field.
Yep.
Then there was the 250s smoking us, because they can brake later and all this. And really what it was is that was affecting probably the C graders in particular and things where they don't have the competence to ride them hard. But those bikes, the 450s got better.
Yep.
They're more rideable. People have worked out how to detune them and all that kind of thing. So the 250s were there as to fill them up. What started happening is they'd have them at a state title, and the guys on the 250s are winning the 450 championship. So there's then, because hang on, you shouldn't be here. What it really comes down to, the MX1 class is 450s. It used to be the open class.
Yep.
In other words, open means open. You can ride anything you like. It's open. So, or it could be referred to as all powers, almost an all powers class. Yep. Traditionally, in overseas and stuff, the 450s are where it's at. That's what you ride. The 250s, that's where it's at. That's what you ride, and so on. The 252 stroke was in the middle of all that mix.
Yeah.
And the court was out on that. Should have they been a 450 because they're making more horsepower, but they're not so rideable, so therefore they're really a 250. When you put them on the track, sometimes they won, sometimes they didn't in the 250 class. So it was pretty comparable.
Yep.
But you were able to ride your bike more. It's costing you, $15,000, $18,000 to buy a bike now. And it was about getting them on the bikes and riding more. It worked. It did work. There was more, all of a sudden there's more, now there's more 450s getting around than there is 250s. But when we go to the state titles, you're not quite seeing it.
Yep.
The 250s are still the strongest. I quite like the whole idea of an open class. I always have. But I also get it from You know, you're on. This is a race for 250s, not just people.
Yeah. So it came up because I said to Kenny, how cool would it be? Brodie Connolly wrapped up the championship. How cool would it be to see him just take his 250 and race in the MX1 class for the last round? You know, just for it would be a great talking point. It would be awesome to see him battling. Obviously,
Bugger up a whole championship of 450s.
yeah, but like as a fan, it would just be.
I'm sure there'd be some pretty unpopular people there.
But and he was like, "No, you can't go at 250 in the 450 class." And I was like,
Cleans out his teammate
Why
in the
not?
first corner. Great. Thanks a lot, teammate.
"Yeah, beats his teammate." Like, what would that?
Yeah, could bring up a whole nother Pandora's box.
But that's cool. That's like, as a fan, as a media person, like that's what I want to see. I want to see these stories. I want to see controversy. Obviously, I want to see good racing, but this is the sort of stuff that makes stories, you know. Throwing that 250 two-stroke in the mix, it makes for good stories. It makes for personalities. Yeah, anyway, so I guess I would love for the MX1 class to be open. It's probably my, the point I'm trying to make, but I understand why there is negatives to that as well. I just think it would be
Goes
very
back
cool.
to your points. It's turned the full circle.
Yeah.
And now it's coming back up again, so...
And again, only at the national level. Like I'm not, I can understand at the lower levels why you've got separate classes.
Yep. Yeah, well, I'm probably the opposite.
Yep.
I'm probably more like at the national level it should stay the way it is, and at lower levels maybe allow the 250s to come in and ride against the 450s.
Yep.
The purist will turn around and say, we'll just run an all-powers class. But do we have time to get through the program?
Not an extra class. I think the appetite is already maxed out. So
yeah, so like you look at the state titles here in Victoria, you've got the MX1, MX2, ABC, all that sort of thing going on, and you just run an all powers class and they run that at a separate day.
Yep.
To give those guys an extra ride if they want one. So they've actually done it so they kept the classes and the integrity to those. But the all-powers class is effectively just a free ride. It's not a championship. I don't believe it's actually awarded a championship.
Yep.
But I'm not this is going to probably be quite controversial. I'm not a big fan of having a championship awarded to C grade or B grade for that matter. The state champion is the best rider in the state, and he'll be an A grader. That they're the prestige of the riding group. All the others could be in what we call a cup class. That's just what I think about it. There can only be one champion, but of the C grade class, are you really a champion? Because you've just come into the sport. I've been riding enduro for the last 10 years, and I rip.
Yep.
And I turn up at the first round of the state championships, and I'm riding in C grade.
And
I'm going to smoke them all.
The other problem with having C grade and B grade champions per se is that it creates an incentive to stay down a class, like sandbag, and you end up, and I mean, we see this at regional level, at state level, especially, like there is riders in C grade and B grade because of our grading system that shouldn't be in C grade and B grade. So is it really like for like championship?
Possibly not.
Yeah, so if you had the championship being in an open skills class, and then you can have C grade and B grade as...
they're like support races.
Yeah, support races. You can still have a cup winner.
Yeah, and hopefully it strives them to get better and be, maybe you don't even call it A grade. You just call it a pro class, and anyone can enter it.
Yep.
If you're willing to enter it. Then I'll have the guys saying, oh, we don't want those guys out there. They're dangerous because they're too Gumby. And we're going flat out, and these guys are having trouble negotiating jumps. So do you have to be, there's that whole grading age group thing across Australia is a massive issue. And I think that, MA, under a federated model, if they would go under the whole sport report, and therefore one organisation runs it all, then maybe that would be possible.
Yep.
But it's really hard when the states are doing their thing and the regions are doing their thing and the nationals doing their thing. Everyone's doing their own thing.
Where that cutoff would be, like at club level, I got no issue with having C grade, B grade, A grade, because the stakes are they're not as high. State level's that one in between. National level, we obviously just want the best of the best.
Yep.
So the states is really, I guess, the only for me the one where it would be a little bit more.
I think
could go other way.
I think the states and the national I look through it the same eyes.
Yep.
I honestly do. I think that as an official, I look at them the same. Like, you know, we're not there to warn or teach or anything. You're there to actually, you know, like officiate, penalise when required. You know, and you're at the highest level of the particular state or the nation. So I think that's the way it is. If you're officiating at club level, then you've got a bit more of a duty to actually help new people come in, help them with their sport. You know, obviously there's...
Foster a bit of development.
Yeah. Because a lot, you know, let's face it, I would hazard a guess that 99%, so out of 100 riders, 99 have never actually read the rule book. And the one only read a couple of passages.
Yep.
You know, that
to try and get out of a penalty that he got the week before.
Yeah, probably. So I think they do get taught from doing. It's a bit like footy.
Yep.
I don't think a lot of football players read the rules of football. They learn it in their club, taught by the people in their club, those things. So that starts at the club level. Interclub's probably the next stage. Like, it's a bit more officious. It's a bit more, you know, especially now that they're going around and they're having interclub championships. Like, how many championships do we have?
Yep.
But they refer to them as championships. So should you be teaching at that? You've got 300 riders here. You know, it's not the place to be teaching.
Yep.
You know, it's a place to be officiating at. But again, like, the C grade is different than the A grade. An A grader should know by now. A C grade is probably a beginner, and maybe it's the first time they've ever ridden outside their club. So, you know, maybe you got to have that level of flexibility.
Yep.
You know, the same could be said at state level. You know, you've got C graders and B graders. You know, there's been chat around having a pro rule book. You know, should we have a pro rule book? They've got it in Australian Superbikes.
Yep.
They have their own rules. You know, should we have regulations for pro racing? Should we have different regulations for state racing? At the moment, we've got our rules are all encompassing, and it's worked for years, and it still works.
And it's good because people, like you said, they're not reading the rule book, so they're learning those rules as they progress through the ranks from junior to senior. It's consistent. Yep. The fans know what they're looking at, like when you're watching through different disciplines and different rules. I think that's a quick way to lose fans if they don't understand what they're watching and they can't follow it. That's a really quick way to...
Yeah, they're confused.
Yep. So, yeah, it's a lot of pros and cons,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Look, don't know what the answer to that is either.
Yeah.
They're all interesting questions, but, like, it works.
Yeah.
And it has worked for years. You know, like, and we've turned out some great champions during that period.
One last question,
Righto.
and it's on the topic of, I guess, types of bikes. So we just had the last round of the ProMX at QMP. I don't think we've seen an electric bike yet in any of the Premier classes, but we did have them in the Vet classes.
And won both.
And they won both. Now, I'm all cool with electric bikes being mixed with combustion engine bikes at this stage, but I would be concerned as to what's going to happen when you start to get more and more electric bikes because, I don't want to see what happened with the two-stroke, four-stroke thing happen again. I think, for a long time it actually destroyed the sport because the cost of competing and being competitive became unattainable for a lot of people that were already racing. And so you had this really high era at the pinnacle of two-stroke racing that really dropped down when four-strokes came onto the scene and then gradually built back up. And I think electric bikes have their place and should be even at the national level. I would just love to see them have their own class if that was the case. So throw another class in the mix now. But yeah, how do you feel about electric bikes? You've been here for a long time. You've seen a lot of changes in the sport. What do you see the future being as far as electric bikes go, and how do you see them transitioning to their premier classes at the ProMX?
I think that they'll be like electric cars. So they'll have their place, and they've definitely got no real place at the moment, but there's not enough of them.
Yep.
You know, at the moment, Stark really have got it. It's been the first bike that's truly a motocross bike, effectively with an electric engine in it and equipped and able. They took out both the vet classes. They did have very good riders.
Yep.
Like they were probably the standout riders in each class. Wouldn't have mattered what you put them on. They were both probably the standout riders. And probably, I don't think the bike actually made the difference. I'm not saying, and if it did, it still comes down to the rider. Someone's got to ride it. And if you can't ride it, you're not going to win anything. So I've seen a few getting around at Interclub and state titles. They've been okay. I wouldn't say they're more competitive or less competitive. I had a good chat to Carl Makem. He's got one and been riding one for a while, and I rate him as a rider and his abilities to make a judgment call. He reckons there's nothing between them. And there's still the question over, can they do a 30-minute moto? That's a big question. Or more to the point, can they do two 30-minute motos? Before they go into limp mode, there's a lot of development to go on in this space. I think that another maybe 5 years we'll get a better read on it.
Yep.
I think electric bikes have got we all like our FMF pipe to be as loud as possible because it's the coolest thing. And then whatever, you got noise restrictions all over the world. The FIM now have reduced their noise tolerances. That's going to continue to be a big deal. We've got space, but we're so small in the world, we're nothing. So like places like Europe that are under continued pressure from noise restrictions
and emissions and everything else,
all those things, and the AMA, well, they just don't mind. Just go nuts, ride them in the backyard for all we care and just make noise because we're the land of the free. But at the same time, they're a massive part of the market. So, but they're going to come under more and more issues with noise as well. So I think they're here to stay. It's just a matter of having enough of the market moved, and all of a sudden, Honda's obviously they've had one over in the Japanese thing. And once we've got enough of them around, then you'll start to have an electric class. I think that's the way it'll ultimately go, but there's got to be a lot more guys on them.
So in the meantime,
because there's nowhere else for them to ride at the moment.
Yep. How would you feel about a Stark being? Let's take out the technical factor of can it make the moto time and all that sort of stuff. Just in terms of the current technology, how would you like to see a Stark racing against the 450s in the MX1 class?
I reckon it'd be great.
Yep.
If he can win on it, he's the best rider in the field. I think it's no problem at all. Like the way that we can actually manage that power, so we lock them in and they're locked in for the day.
60 horsepower, yep.
Whatever the setting. So at national level, they all have to be locked in at the 60 or 60 and 48. Yeah, I think that's right. So it gets locked in. So the 4 strokes are making that same kind of power. It'd be interesting, wouldn't it, to have one out in front and get it done. At the end of the day, the best guy on the bike, the best rider is going to win a championship.
Yep.
So I don't really care what bike he's on.
That's my whole... At national level, yep, I agree. Stepping down to state and regional level, that's where I think the damage can be done. And I guess my concern, I'm not saying it's going to happen or not, because I've spoken to a couple of the guys that race them at the state titles, the big state titles, and they all still ride combustion engine bikes as well. Mm-hmm. And they basically said that, to coin one of them, he said it's better in every single way. And he said, when I get the ability to ride it the way it should be ridden, he goes, I'll be way better than I am on my 450.
So what's stopping him now?
Just getting used to it. Like he said, starting, like we spoke about, starting was he didn't know how to start without a clutch. And he said, he had to figure out the best way, which was just turning the throttle. He was trying to...
Usually the best way to go faster is turn the throttle.
Yep.
It seems to work on all kinds.
But I guess, they're, especially at this stage, they're a lot more expensive to purchase. And what I would hate to see is at the lower levels, there's a lot of riders that still take a lot of pride in being able to win at a club level, at a regional level, at a state level, that if these bikes are superior technology, which by accounts from a lot of the guys that ride them, Carl Makem opinion, I guess, isn't what I've heard from riders that are riding them, a lot of them say they are better, and you don't have to be as good a rider to go as fast on an electric bike. You don't have to move your feet. There's no gears. The other description that I had was that you're always in the meat of the power. So over the course of a lap on a petrol bike, you're going to be low in the revs, you're going to be high in the revs. On an electric bike, you're always at the
attached to your
level.
wrist.
Yep. And so, there's 2 or 3 seconds a lap there at the lower levels. Obviously that's going to be a lot finer once you get to the elite level riders. And so, given that the expense is attached to that as well, I could see at the amateur level riders that are currently winning, if they can't afford to transition, eventually dropping out of the sport because they want to compete. Like you said, they're racers. And I'd hate anything that drops the numbers down. So as soon as there's enough of these things, I'd love to see them in their own class.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with that. I think we're in a testing phase.
Yep.
Like, I'm talking across the world.
Yep.
So until you get enough of them out there and it starts to turn up, then there's no class for them to ride. So I think to have them riding is good enough. And it's a bit like KTM were with their 50s. Now all of a sudden you've got the Cobras out there and they're pretty good little piece of equipment and they're competing and everyone's like throwing their arms up and said, this is terrible, you're going to have to do something about this. No, the industry will find its levels. It always does. So they'll have an advantage for a while and then the others will have an advantage for a while. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen in this development. I think in time it'll probably be that they'll have their own class when there's enough numbers and volume of bikes in the marketplace that it can happen. By having them win some races, that'll encourage more people to go down that pathway. As they go down the pathway, there'll be more of a push towards electric bikes.
Yep.
I know they've got a sort of grand plan, we'll almost call it, or they're observing a lot and gathering a lot of information. And I think it's just to watch this space and just accept them. It's a bit like people carrying on about the MX3 class and allowing 14 and 15-year-olds to compete against a senior rider as long as they're under 18. Everyone's like up in arms, but give it its chance to grow, give it its chance to participate and see what comes of it. And then you can always change. Like, that's the beauty of making a decision. You get an opportunity to make another decision.
Yep.
It's just, as long as it's kept fair and it's kept safe, then all's well. See, I'd be more scared on the electric bike of people not hearing me coming.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting day, I'll tell you. Like, I don't know if you've heard some of the conversations that go out on that track.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And we're talking about with a lot of noise. Imagine when they're all silent. Yep. You're going to hear some very colourful conversations, I can tell you. That's one of the things we get as officials. You get to hear and see it all. It's quite entertaining sometimes.
I've raced BMX, I've raced mountain bikes, and I can tell you there's conversations that happen on those, so it'll be exactly the same once you get to the electric bikes. So, and they're not always pleasant conversations when you're racing either.
And at TV, they're going to have one of those beep buttons. Yeah. Everything pre-recorded.
Yeah.
So, look, I think if it means, like, let's put us down the track 20 years from now, maybe, who knows what's going to happen with noise and combustion engines and all this kind of and emissions, and maybe our option is going to be electric bikes, and everyone goes, if we can't make noise, we're not going to ride. And I go, what, so you're going to give up riding motorbikes, are you?
That's not going to happen.
Well, I'd like to think not. Yeah.
I think it's...
And some of the guys ride them, so they're great fun.
Yep. Oh, they're...
And you can literally, here you are in Wonthaggi, and you got out the back, you could build a little track and you could ride around on it.
If I had an electric bike, I would have, we're on an acre here, the backyard's probably, I don't know, a third of an acre. I would have a track out there 100% if I had an electric bike.
And the most noise you make is when you lose control and hit the back fence.
Yep.
Should make a nice clanging sound.
It should. So if anyone from Stark's listening and they want to throw a free bike
my way,
to a janky podcast, forget you.
Oh, come on, mate! I'm nearly 63. I'm going to need something.
If they want to throw 2 Stark bugs our way,
okay, I'll come down and ride in your backyard.
That's right. Unreal.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, just before I let you go, then, is there anything? Based on this line of conversation, is there anything that you would like to see change as far as the sport goes? Anything we could improve, and any sort of parting thoughts?
Not really. I think we've covered a lot of things here. Like, I think that I reinforce what I've said before. I think we all need, what we can do better is we all need to step up and take some ownership of our sport and where it's going. And that even comes down to rule changes. Like, if you've got some feeling about a rule should be changed or something should be taken out or whatever, then talking in the pits doesn't get it done.
Yep.
There's a form you fill out, you send it in, you follow the process. If something happens on the track and a decision gets made, you have the opportunity to protest. Do it. Like, oh, I'm not a guy that protests. Well, then don't whinge. No point coming and whinging to me about it. If you're not prepared to put your money where your mouth is, then we're not having this conversation. So it's all the same thing. It's about, like, you need to actually engage yourself into the sport, invest some effort into it, rather than just taking from it. I'm a rider and I'm going out and having a ride and it's all about me, and when I finish I put it on the trail, I go home. Like, I think that you get a lot more out of the sport by being engaged with it and the people around it, and it's satisfying and you get to achieve amazing things. And I suppose I look at, you brought up right at the start, and I've won an award, which is great. But I've also been to Argentina and been involved in an MXGP. I've been overseas and officiated. I've been all around Australia. Like, I never had any plans. It's just being involved just gets you there. Now, you might have no desire to go to those levels, and that's fine. But, we still need people just to help out. Even, I've semi-retired now. I'm not really working that much anymore, which has kept me in the sport a bit longer. I've learned to drive a loader and a bobcat out at the track, fixing up jumps, and and I'm having a great time. And now someone else at the club that normally would do that is able to go and do something else. Or he wants to come out or fix the sprinkler I just ran over with the bobcat. But anyway, sometimes that happens. It's called collateral damage. But it just needs everyone to do a little bit. Will make it a lot easier. And I think if that would be the greatest thing that could ever be achieved, because then we get to have amazing racing and riding, and it's not really about racing. It's actually about riding. Yeah. So it doesn't matter that you don't want to compete, just to come out and on a practice day and have a ride around the track, and as I said earlier, talk in the pits and talk about oh, that was really funny when you crashed or you lost the front end, or like I got filled in, and it's a bit like riding out in the bush. It's like hilarious. Yep. It's the ultimate kid sport that you can be a kid all your life.
And you said it before, I think, that the word community.
Yeah.
Like, really, that's what it comes down to.
And it's quite a strange thing that, like in all the travels, even out of officiating, I'm talking about with my own boys, travelling all over Australia racing, you talk to people and they go, oh, I'm from Foster. Oh, yeah, been there. Oh, what, you know where it is? I go, yeah, we went up through there and did some riding at a mate's place, and then we went on to Toowoomba and rode at their place, and then we were going up to the national championships at Coolum. Yeah. And we've driven over, we've got friends all over the country and now all over the world. And then to see some of our boys go overseas and achieve the, things like, I still remember when Jet Lawrence came out and rode that Supercross down in Melbourne, and I was
2009,
down there, and he lost control going down that rhythm section and nearly stacked it, and he came, he said, oh, did anyone see that? I said, oh, I did. and he's like, I didn't even, I knew who he was and all that, but he's just a young kid. He was 16 years old, and we're just communicating, he's a good fella. And we're having a laugh over what just went on there, and you get those opportunities because we've all got a common interest. Yeah, and that's what binds you together. And it's like the camping at the track and having a fire going and sitting around and all having a chat, form friendships, and it's to be honest, it's kept me young. I think it has anyway. I can communicate with them and I understand their language and all that sort of thing. Sometimes I'll understand mine. Sometimes they probably shouldn't hear that, but anyway, it happens that way. But like it is what it is. But like we all do it because we love it.
Yeah, I think that's the take-home message for sure.
Yeah, so like you taking photos, you're doing your bit.
But I do it because I love it. It doesn't come with a 6-figure paycheck either.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
It would be nice,
but you're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, I spent a lot of years working jobs I didn't like to be able to get to this point and actually do something that I love. And it's like you said, everyone does their little bit, and it's going to make, hopefully, the sport better in the long run.
Yep, and no one owes you anything.
Yeah.
You're going to earn everything you get. That's life.
Yeah, but it's like you said, it's the greatest sport on earth. It's definitely a community. I've come from other sports and pastimes that don't have that level of community, and I think sometimes it gets taken for granted. We're all, like you said, we're pursuing the same overall interest. Whether you're a rider, you're a parent, you're an official, you're trying to achieve the same goal.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever expect to see someone like Djokovic hand his tennis racket over to his opponent.
Yeah,
we do.
Yep. Yeah, you see bikes. Yeah.
In fact, we hand over an $18,000 tennis racket.
Yep.
And if you crash it, just fix the bars, and then we all have a laugh about it. Like, how mental's that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. That's what makes the sport great.
It is. It's a great thing, and we just need to all support each other.
Yeah.
And it'll just keep on going and giving.
Oh, for sure. Well, I know you've actually got to get to the racetrack, so
I do.
I really, really appreciate you coming in studio to record this with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. So, thanks, Mark. Thanks for coming in.
Yep. No worries at all, and thanks for having me and listening to me babble on.
It's been unreal, and I'll see you tomorrow.
You will on the racetrack.
That's it.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. And that's it for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. A massive thank you to Mark for taking the time to join me here in the Moto Asylum for a chat, and a big thanks to our partners for helping us to bring you this episode. Graphics by Aqua, Southeast Pools, Death Grip Products, Iro Helmets, Bolt Everywhere Premium Racewear, 5 Gloves, Wolf Building Compliance, Seaview Carpentry and Property Maintenance, and Kimber Constructions. Until next time, I've been your host, Pete Wolf. See ya.